Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are very controversial games. Many fans claim this to be their favorite game in the franchise, while some claim that this is a game that highlights what is wrong with modern Pokemon games. To see whether or not one side is more true than the other, I'm going to explain everything there is to this game in this very long video that you clicked on. Now, as someone who has played this game before, I have some preconceived opinions about it. To be truthful, the last time I played this game was actually like 2016 and I was like 11, so I didn't exactly have a brain that was able to analyze these games as I do now, but at that time I had a lot of fun playing this game. But that's because I play Pokemon with my brain turned off for the most part. Most of the time when I play Pokemon, it's almost like I'm on autopilot. I've had almost a decade gap between playthroughs, so for this playthrough I had to actually pay attention to the story and world building, which is a very different experience, let me say. This game gets away with a lot of things that other games get ridiculed for. Now, I understand that every game has pros and cons, but for me a good game overcomes those cons. And with this review, I'm going to see if Omega Ruby can overcome its cons. Without making this intro too long, let's hop right into this long game as I explain to you everything this game has to offer. And it's a lot. The game starts with you looking at your Pokénav and seeing Professor Birch in his 2000s look. Then we immediately cut to how much better the remake of this region looks. Now, normally I wouldn't like something like this, but I don't consider this a fourth wall break. I'm not a huge fan when the world realizes it's a fictional world and treats its characters as so, but this is simply just an opening shot, and not once does it ever say anything like, "Oh yeah, I'm Professor Birch from the original Ruby," or some dumb shit like that. As far as I'm concerned, this is the game leaning on that fourth wall, just trying to show the person how updated and fresh Hoenn looks. Because after all, this is the only major time the game does this. I guess I can let it slide. Welcome to Littleroot. I guess our mom wasn't comfortable with us sitting in the front seat, so we sat with all the packages and no seatbelt. This game constantly slaps you in the face with Pokemon doing human tasks, with everything being so Pokemon oriented. I mean, the moving company is literally just Machokes. This is the first region to also acknowledge the fact that we have a dad, and to celebrate our move-in, he gives you a clock. Cool. Now, unlike the previous region where Pokemon had an actual time-based system, the clock really only depicts what the world will look like. No encounters or Pokemon are changed, it's just for aesthetics. The reason your family moved to Hoenn is because he's a gym leader here, and he is also great friends with the local professor, Birch, who has a daughter named May, or if you're playing as the girl character, a son named Brendan. Meeting our professor, you walk out onto the first route and see a grown man getting chased by an itty-bitty puppy. This entire family is so corny and embarrassing. This is the prompt for our starter Pokemon, as we can pick between Trico, the grass starter, Torchic, the fire starter, and Mudkip, the water starter. In my humble opinion, I think Trico is the weakest of the three, as there's no point in the game where he stands out significantly. He's just decent all around. Torchic is a really great late game Pokemon and useful for the league champion, and Mudkip has the easiest early game, which is arguably the most important considering the limited options at this point. This is the earliest point of one of my main problems with Oras and the challenge it had trying to balance the new mechanics, but since I haven't gotten to the main reason why it doesn't work out, I'll leave it at that. Now that Birch has told us May is somewhere in the woods, we can go out and explore on our own. I can also take this time to explain the controls. For every Pokemon game, the movement has strictly come from the D-pad. In X and Y, there was also the circle pad, but that turned into skates that you could use. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are the first games in which you can use both the D-pad and circle pad to walk. This provides both a pro and con in my eyes. The pro being the choice for the players. Full 360 movement looks more natural for the character, and also how far you have the circle pad pushed also correlates to character movement. If you are barely pushing the circle pad, you can sneak around, which reduces the chance for Pokemon attacking you. But having it fully pushed out results in faster movement. Or if you don't like that and have been accustomed to the D-pad, you can still choose to move around in that form. The only thing I don't like about that is the snapping that comes with the D-pad. If you were just moving around with the circle pad and started using the D-pad, your character does this awkward snap to the grid that I just find super weird and unnatural. What I also find weird is that you can't go full 360 in a house. It will limit your character to the 8 cardinal directions, but then immediately when you go outside, you have free range of motion again. What, is going in a non-cardinal direction in this game illegal? The first route is extremely short, and we reach Oldale Town, where we are introduced to the many game mechanics necessary for our playthrough. We also experience those roadblocks that make no sense that Pokemon has a tendency to use. This guy found some cool footprints he wants to draw. The game wants you to keep heading north because May is doing some work for her dad. Despite her having years more experience than we do, her Pokemon is only level 5. I gotta say, this is really stupid. There should be some explanation as to why her Pokemon is only level 5. Like how in Scarlet and Violet, Nimona is apparently this ace trainer with high talent who's been battling for a long time. But because we are new and just became her friend, she wants to restart her journey and get a new starter Pokemon so she can travel with us from the beginning. Kinda how when we, the player, get bored with our save file, we delete it and start a new journey for the experience of playing the same game again because we want to try something new despite having all this skill. But for May, there is simply no explanation as to why she has this much experience and has a new Pokemon just given to her from her dad. For beating the shit out of May, you get rewarded with a Pokedex and some Pokeballs. I believe that it was in Pokemon Black and White that the Pokedex got changed in which you no longer have to catch the Pokemon for it to be seen in your Pokedex, you just have to encounter it. In order to obtain all the info, you still have to catch it, but in order to have an entire Pokedex seen, you just need to encounter them. I know Pokemon introductions lately are heavily criticized for being super hand-holding, and I honestly think that it begins with this game. After beating May, you are given cutscene after cutscene after cutscene on explanations. Only one of these are worth mentioning, and that's May telling you about sneak encounters. She introduces you to the Dex Nav. She tells you to sneak next to the Pokemon as you can see a tail shaking around. That's it. So not only was I interrupted for the 4th time in about 5 minutes, but you don't even actually explain the mechanic you're giving me a tutorial on. All I'm told is to sneak, but the whole point of this is that you need to get close to the Pokemon without scaring it, because if you scare it, it runs away and you miss out on a possible special encounter. This example Pokemon is a Poochyena with Fire Fang, a move that Poochyena doesn't learn naturally. These special moves are usually moves from their egg list. If you click on the Dex Nav magnifying glass, once you get close enough, it tells you about the Pokemon you are sneaking up on and what potentially special quality it may have. It can be a move or hidden ability. They may also be higher leveled than the Pokemon on their route. The Dex Nav feature can also be commonly used to chain Pokemon and shiny hunt later on, but once again, none of this is explained to the player. Another small critique I have with this game is the transitions between routes and towns. When going to another route such as Oldale to Route 102, there's this small fade to black. This makes the world feel disconnected and sort of isolates the routes to feel like their own section rather than one complete world. Going back to the Dex Nav, I showed a lot of discontent with how it was introduced, and it probably made a ton of people feel like I didn't like it. That would be the exact opposite of how I feel about it. I absolutely love the inclusion of this machine. It solves one of the many problems I have with wild encounters, and that being encounter rates. Some Pokemon are naturally harder to find than others. The Pokemon being targeted by the Dex Nav show a distinct part of their body, making harder Pokemon easier to find. Not only that, but you can still possibly encounter Pokemon by sneaking, which might be a double-edged sword at some points, but an overall improvement to the catching experience. Pokemon like Ralts and Lotad are easier to catch in the earlier game due to this mechanic. Not to mention that there are outlines of Pokemon you failed to catch but have seen out of the grass. If you have encountered a Pokemon on your desired route, you can manually search for it by tapping it on your Dex Nav and sneaking until that Pokemon pops out. This is also how people chain their catches in Shiny Hunt. If you catch the Pokemon you want and it doesn't have the right ability, the Dex Nav also helps through the manual search by making the odds of not only finding it, but also the odds of having your desired ability a lot more common. The Dex Nav also gets better the more you use it. There's something called a search level that levels up whenever the Dex Nav is used, and that gives you greater benefits. You can see its level, its first move, the ability it has, and can even see if it has a hold item. It's a really interesting feature, and whenever I play, I try to get my Pokemon from the Dex Nav. Arriving in Petalburg. This song is really good. A lot of the songs in this game are really good. You'll be hearing me say that a lot, because I just want to hammer in how good this soundtrack is. We meet Wally and our dad, who is the gym leader of the town, but is too strong for us because he's actually the 5th gym. Little frail twink Wally is a boy who wants a Pokemon so he won't be alone when he goes to Verdanturf, a town that we don't see until much later. We are then forced into another vague tutorial. I honestly wouldn't mind if every single tutorial was just crammed into the first 10 minutes of the game, rather than Game Freak trying to spread these tutorials out, because I am so tired of being stopped every 5 minutes for something terribly explained. It's never mentioned that this is a catching tutorial. As far as I'm concerned, Wally's just catching a Pokemon. What gives off less of a tutorial vibe is the fact that he's the one asking us if he's doing this right. Like, bitch, I don't f***ing know. I'm more surprised that you caught a male Ralts first try. Omega Ruby is so bad at explaining their mechanics. May's fight doesn't explain battling when that's the point of a tutorial battle. Her Dex Nav tutorial doesn't go over as much as it needs to, and this catching tutorial doesn't even say much. It shows him throwing a ball. I gave shit to this game for hand-holding, but it doesn't hold your hand where it's supposed to. Even worse, the timing of these tutorials are atrocious. It is teaching me how to catch Pokemon, even though I have already been able to catch Pokemon for 3 routes now. The Dex Nav tutorial doesn't directly tell me to catch the Poochyena, but it is heavily implied that you should catch this Pokemon because it's special. Maybe you should have taught me how to catch Pokemon at May's Dex Nav instruction, and made the Dex Nav instruction where Wally's tutorial is. Imagine you have a kid, and don't help him when he's trying to learn how to ride a bike without training wheels, and he faceplants onto the cement. But yet you go step by step helping that same kid and trying to teach him how to walk, despite him knowing how to walk for years already. This unfortunate way of tutorialing has bled into every other game since, and while it may not have originated from Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, it sure does get extremely exposed in this beginning. Wally is going to be appearing again and is a minor character that we'll have to care about as he goes through his own story. Moving on to Route 104, I gotta say I love these route themes. Such adventurous sounds and a drastic improvement from the Game Boy, especially this part right here. There isn't much to do on this route as of right now, but will become useful later. Petalburg Woods is technically our first dungeon of the game and splits Route 104 into 2. Over on the right side are a bunch of hidden items and a route that backtracks onto Route 104. And as we explore, we run into our first encounter with the evil team of the game, either Team Magma or Team Aqua, depending on which version you're playing. After saving the scientist from the grunt, you get the EXP share, and at this point, congratulations! Way to beat the game! Because the EXP share turns this game into an absolute joke. Obviously you can turn it off, but if you play with it on, well, that's your choice, and I respect it. In previous games, the EXP share could only be applied to one Pokemon, and it would split the experience between those 2 Pokemon. Here it acts as an XP all, but here's the catch. The fighting Pokemon still gets 100% of the experience, while every single Pokemon gets half instead of the usual, where all a Pokemon would get 1/6. So a Pokemon getting 600 XP, that means every other Pokemon in the party gets 300 XP, rather than before where every Pokemon would have just gotten 100 XP. To make matters worse, the game's level curve is not adjusted to this new EXP share, so you end up extremely over-leveled after just a couple of gyms of usage. That's not to mention that different Pokemon have different EXP thresholds to level up, as well as opponents' Pokemon giving out different amounts of XP. The berry house is on the other side of Route 104 and gets us the Whalmer Pail, which allows us to grow our own berries. There's also this patch of grass behind the house with many hidden items. Rustboro is the next town and offers plenty of firsts for us. Our first gym and first HM to be specific. The Cutter's House offers HMO 1, which I actually don't think is mandatory. It offers a lot of optional and useful items as well as a funhouse coming up later, but as far as story progression, it doesn't have much use. There are also tons of things to do in Rustboro. The school gives you a quick claw and also knowledge about status conditions. One of the best jokes is also in Rustboro where an ace trainer gives you a float stone and then once you re-enter, he gains a lot of weight suddenly. I gotta say, this game does have some really funny jokes if you do find them. The first gym is home to Roxanne's rock-type Pokemon. She just graduated apparently. Roxanne. Usually the first gyms are treated like a huge joke. But Nosepass ain't exactly an easy Pokemon, for all 3 starters too. Rock types unfortunately are always going to be a beginning gym simply because of the fact that it's a terrible type. A late game rock gym isn't exactly going to be challenging, so it's either in the beginning or not a gym at all. I don't have a lot to say about this gym, especially since it's not that bad for a starter gym, so let's talk about the background. No, seriously, there's a lot of detail here. There's statues we see in the gym, the fossil on the wall, and once again the music is really good. A magma grunt runs off into the woods and we gotta go get the stuff. Dude, there's no way an animator of this game saw that and thought it was okay to put that in. While on the run, he takes a bird hostage for a dramatic effect. The bird belongs to this old man outside. Turns out the president wants to see us because we helped a local worker. He's not here to congratulate us, he wants us to do a task for him because he sees potential in our labor. Deliver some goods to Slateport, and while we're at it, talk to a man named Steven Stone. I find it odd how this man still uses letters, especially since in Emerald he literally calls us about his letter. So in both versions, there's an alternate way of getting in touch with Steven. He just chooses to use a letter for some odd reason. Mr. Briny will gladly take you to Dewford because you saved his bird, and off we go. Dewford is known for their trend setting despite being isolated on a beach in the corner of this world. In Ruby and Sapphire, you could select 2 words from the word selector, but here in Omega Ruby, the phrases are limited to items in your bag? A huge downgrade, but this is such a minor thing that I don't even think it matters to people other than those who talk to every single random NPC, so me. Sure, the things that are trendy seem robotic compared to the original game, but like I said, it's a pretty minor thing. You get access to a fishing rod on this tiny island, and time for a gym. A gym that's a gym.
On behalf of all gym bros, thank you.
Brawly is the fighting type, and this brings me to something that I have been wanting to talk about for a bit, but I didn't want to cram every single thing in the beginning. The fairy type. A job every remake has to do is successfully incorporate new gimmicks and mechanics that have been changed since the original release. The fairy type was something introduced in X and Y, and while those new fairy Pokemon aren't in this game, many old Pokemon had their types changed, and some were given the fairy type. Ralts has an added fairy type, Azumarill is now water fairy, and many more as well. The fairy type itself was made to nerf the dragon type, and, well, it did that by becoming the new absolutely broken type. Only weak to steel and poison, mind you, 2 defensive types, and immune to dragon moves. This game is simply not built to have fairy types in its game, but also the existence of fairy types makes new Pokemon useful. I wasn't the biggest fan of Azumarill, but with its fairy typing, I actually quite like it. I think the problem of fairy types being broken isn't this game's fault, but it's another one of those instances of where it's something that people know, but it just becomes extremely apparent in Oros specifically. The fighting type is also weak to fairy, which is why I felt the need to bring it up here. Granite Cave is where you will find Steven Stone, and thank God this cave has been turned into a straight path instead of the flash cave that it used to be. Instead of looking at rocks, Steven is looking at this mural of some important legendary Pokemon. Steven gives the usual, "Oh man, you look like you could be the Pokemon champion or whatever. Cool man, I just met you." Our boating journey doesn't stop there as we need to head to Slateport to drop off the Devon parts that we rescued. Over to the left of the beach is a battle house that will give you free soda for completing all of the battles. God, it's so my shoddy. Slateport has some banging music and some pretty interesting things happening around the town. This outside market has some niche shops. You've got TMs, incense, and eventually some items for your secret base, but that's not until way later. The Pokemon Fan Club is where you can find the game's Soothe Bell, but a little side complaint I have is that these games don't really tell you what friendship does. I know what it does, but that's because I've been playing Pokemon for basically my entire life. But to someone who's new, they wouldn't know, and the game doesn't explain to you what the Soothe Bell does either. It just vaguely says something about friendship. I think a little weird dialogue from an NPC to explain an essential mechanic to the game is a lot better than having someone gain an awesome item and never knowing what it does and therefore never using it. Only sometimes do the item descriptions help the person understand what they do. Even though we have websites like Bulbapedia and Pokemon Database to help us understand things, I think having to rely on a website to understand how certain things work in a game is a major flaw as a whole. If there is a way to explain something within a game, then you should be doing so. A text from the person saying, if you give a Pokemon the Soothe Bell, it'll become happier, which can make some Pokemon evolve, wouldn't actually be too bad of a text. The name rater is ironically improperly named. He doesn't actually rate your names, he just allows you to change them. I like the option that you can change a Pokemon's name even after you catch it. In front of the museum are a bunch of magma grunts. You are supposed to go here, but the game actually wants you to go to the wrong place. This concept is weird because it does get old after the first time you've played it, but as a character exploring the town for the first time, walking into the wrong place does make sense. Go to the dock and mistakenly think it's Stern, then go back to the museum. One of the funny things I remember about the museum is that one of the grunts actually remembers you from Petalburg Woods and runs away once he sees you again. Another cool thing is the world building in this museum. As a guy who wants to mash the A button on every single square he steps on, oddly enough this museum teaches you a lot about scientific advancements done in the real world. I can imagine a child actually learning something interesting from this game, which brings a smile to my face for some innocent reason. On the top floor, we meet Stern and give him the parts while Team Magma tries to steal them. Instead of using a single brain cell and doing a 2v1 battle, they go back to back. After defeating the grunts, we get our first encounter with the leader of Team Magma, Maxie, who is dope as f until you realize what he sounds like in the anime.
My name is Maxie. I'm the leader of Team Magma.
To be fair, he is the badass he's supposed to be in Pokemon Generations.
After this mission is over, we'll meet again.
Intruder has broken through Sector 1!
If you're playing Alpha Sapphire, you meet Archie, the leader of Team Aqua, who was probably one of the best redesigns in recent memory. Maxie doesn't attack you, instead he just gives you the vague threat of the day and leaves. Maxie claims that Earth needs a stage in which humans can continue to evolve, and the only way to do so is by expanding the landmass. Whereas Team Aqua, Archie is fed up with humanity polluting the oceans, so he wants to expand the oceans, thereby getting rid of the land masses. As much as people say how stupid this story is, I kinda like the concept of it. It's not just land versus sea like all the brain-dead people say it is. Rather, it's being humanity versus nature and how that ties into the land and sea. Archie thrives for a world benefiting Pokemon, whereas Maxie thrives for a world benefiting people. Oras does a way better job of conveying this idea than its predecessor, and I don't think many people actually catch the subtle differences in the games. One of the dumbest things about Pokemon games is how it constantly reminds you that you are the protagonist. If I'm Maxie at this moment, why would I tell a 12-year-old kid that I'm kind of intimidated by him? What the f*** is this tiny-ass dude gonna do? Also, what seems like a bad first impression is the fact that he just gives up at any slight resistance. Did you not actually need these parts? When leaving Slateport, we get interrupted again so that the game can show us the contest spectacular. What I hate about this is that 1, the game forces you to go through this dumbass cutscene, but 2, is that you can't actually do anything in this hall until you trigger the event. So basically, if you enter this hall before trying to leave Slateport, you can't do anything. This is kind of stupid because it's penalizing the people who do care about this event and choose to walk into it by their own exploration. This also forces people who don't give a shit into this cutscene, which is another issue. This game once again reminds you that you are the protagonist and deserve to be picked for everything. I would have found it more interesting if Lycia, the contest idol, saw absolutely zero potential in you, but as you kept winning the contest, she became more fond of you. That sounds a lot more interesting than her immediately being your #1 fan. Another thing that I don't necessarily agree with is the contest Pikachu they give you. This Pikachu has perfect contest stats around the board, which completely eliminates any sort of special training one would need to perfect this side mode. I wish these rewards were given to you after completing a certain number of contests, so therefore it shows that you're interested in the side mode. I haven't even actually explained how contests work, and I'm already this worked up over nothing. Contests are divided into different segments. The first one being this beauty segment that shows how well groomed your Pokemon are. This can be done via Pokeblocks, which are made from berries. What I find to be tedious is that most of the useful berries aren't found until the late game. Berries are the most helpful thing in this mode, and in fact, berries are the only thing you need to be good at in this side mode. You don't need skill, you just need to use the most correct berries for your contest. The next part of the contest is the move appeal, where the 4 Pokemon take turns showing off their moves in order to impress the audience. There are different effects a move may have, like well-played moves will fill the excitement meter in the top left of the top screen. The Pokemon that fills it will fully gain a massive amount of approval all at once. There are effects like changing the turn order or disrupting another Pokemon, and to be honest, you have no control over this. You just kind of have to deal with what the other Pokemon do and hope to God that nothing messes up what you're doing. To this day, I still don't fully understand an effective way to consistently win this segment, because it's casino levels of luck disguised as strategy. Not to mention that this section takes forever to complete. You spend so much time just looking at the screen doing nothing, and it makes you feel like you're just wasting time. When I look at the other side modes like Pokestar Studios or the Pokeathlon, sure, they contribute absolutely nothing to the main story or game, but they shouldn't have to in order to be fun. But there should be some sort of reward for the player for being interested in these side modes. In the Pokeathlon, not only was there the shop you could buy items from, but you also unlocked interesting rooms based on the achievements you collected within the side mode. In Pokestar Studios, you got different scenes to act in, and your fans would give you items like full restores or nuggets. There is none of that here in the contest, except for the one big reward you get for Lycia in the Master Contest. There's absolutely no reason to go back to these modes once you've gotten that, or better yet, no reason at all to go here simply based on the fact that you don't get some sort of reward for exploration. Nobody gives a shit about these contests because there is nothing memorable to them. I literally replay Heart Gold sometimes just for the Pokeathlon. Or I go to the PWT in Black 2 and White 2 because holy shit, every gym leader's there. However, a side minigame that is impactful that I will talk about is the super training on the bottom of your screen. We've had the PSS, PokeME, and Super Training apps available to us for a while now, but I was waiting for a good time to talk about them. Super Training actually has a meaningful impact. Players can EV train their Pokemon with punching bags that can be applied to certain stats. Not only that, but there's a friendship punching bag that can raise friendship even quicker than the Soothe Bell. Super Training regimens are soccer-like minigames where you hit the ball into a balloon Pokemon and try to score as much as possible. Once a Pokemon is fully trained, there are super secret training regimens where the player can get possible items. Pokemon Me is also introduced alongside the training and lets you create stronger bonds with your Pokemon. This right here started all the shit where your Pokemon toughs hits out and lands crits more often simply because they love you. You can feed your Pokemon Pokepuffs, you can play games with them, and you can decorate the main screen all to gain affection. Even more broken is that affection can let a Pokemon gain more experience. I'm familiar with both of these simply because they are beneficial, unlike the contest. Also, I love using Squivleon, and Pokemon Me is how you would get a Squivleon. The PlayNav is basically the top and bottom floor of the Poke Centers, as it allows you to battle online, trade online, a Wonder Trade, and the Search Global Trade System. Wonder Trading is where you send a Pokemon of your choice to a random person, and they send you their chosen Pokemon, hoping you get something you want. This usually ends in 2 bad Pokemon being traded, which isn't exactly the most useful, but it is a great source of challenge runs. Like, I remember one time my friend and I did a run where we traded 6 Pokemon in the Wonder Trade, and the 6 we got back was our permanent team that we had to use. It's a very interesting idea for sure, just not exactly executed in the best way. The Global Trade System is where you leave a Pokemon in the system, requesting for a specific Pokemon that you want for the one you put in. You can put in a Slugma and request a Shaman for that Pokemon. I use that example specifically because once again, people are really greedy. I once saw somebody wanting a Manaphy for a Trico. The odds of you finding a reasonable trade here is realistically 0. Done with the ranting for a bit, we move on to the next route, and I gotta love this opening shot showing the bike track up above and then telling us we can't use that path because we don't have a bike. It gives more appeal to having a bike for the player. We once again get interrupted by Team Magma shouting their plans as loud as possible. This is to make sure that we know where they'll be going, even though they won't be important for a long time. The Trick House is a house dedicated to puzzles made by HMs. We can do the first maze, but we'll need the other HMs in order to complete the rest. I find it really odd that there's a man just hiding in his house waiting for a stranger to find him, but then I remember that people like this probably exist in the real world. May greets us in the grass patch, and god damn does her theme go so hard! I never mentioned this in the first time, but I want to mention it now that her team is starting to take shape. Her theme is so damn good for no reason. It has that competitive series feeling, but then also transitions into this more lighthearted sound that gives the vibe of a friendly competition among friends. I cannot stress this enough, but the music is one of the highest points in the game for me, and that alone escalates a lot of the gameplay to make a much more enjoyable experience. She gives you the dowsing machine, which is this goofy ass machine that makes us look like SZA off her deluxe album. One of the buggier things about this machine is that it locks you to the 8 cardinal directions one can move using the D-pad, meaning that when in use, we can't free roam. Also, something that you can't do with the dowsing machine is sneak on the grass. I have missed so many Dex Nav encounters due to this. I can imagine developers had a rough time trying to get the dowsing machine to work in free roam, so they locked it to the 8 directions instead. Mauville gets the biggest change of any town in this game, turning into this dome-looking structure? This mall-looking structure? I don't know. Before I go over all the side things to do here, Wally gets some development as we see him wanting to challenge the gym. His uncle, I don't know, I low-key don't read game dialogue, doesn't have faith in him, so Wally challenges us in order to change his mind. After beating him, he decides he shouldn't challenge the gym. Instead, he wants you to be his rival and says it in the most twink way possible. People are so corny in this region, dude. We also receive the Rock Smash HM from his uncle. Mauville is an essential part of the mainland as it has an exit in all 4 directions, and you'll be going through this place a lot as part of backtracking. Here you can find the bike shop and have 2 choices, the Mach Bike and the Acro Bike. The Mach Bike is really fast and good for fast travel, while the Acro Bike lets you do tricks but is much slower. What this game doesn't tell you is that there are optional areas locked behind both bikes. Only the Mach Bike can let you go up these dirt ramps, but only on the Acro Bike can you make these jumps later on in the game. You can switch out whenever you want, which is really nice, but really makes me ask the question, why does this guy just let me use his bike for free? At least in earlier games, there were somewhat valid reasons as to why we got a free bike, but there's no explanation in this game. There are also tons of shops in Mauville, each serving a unique purpose that you will probably never use in 2025. Check out TV Mauville and you can pretend to be on the news. Unfortunately, you don't actually see yourself on the BuzzNav. The Mauville Food Court lets you order some food, and while you wait, you have to battle people. You can get some cool berries for it as you unlock more foods, and you also gain experience in these battles if you want to level grind here. In the Crooner's Cafe, there's a man who will teach you Keldeo and Meloetta's signature move if you somehow happen to have those 2 Pokemon. There are some other move tutors. One of them teaches you the pledge moves, which are awful, and the other teaches Hydro Cannon, Frenzy Plant, and Blast Burn, overpowering moves with lots of drawbacks. A massage place for your Pokemon to raise happiness, a battle institution which can get you battle points for some rewards, a mirror shop. If you come here with a Landorus, Tornadus, or Thundurus, you can get a reveal glass which changes their form. A Pokemileage store sells you some items, and Pokemiles are gained through trading, and you get miles based on how far the trade distance between you and someone else is. Most of these shops aren't useful or are one-time shops, which kind of makes Mauville feel larger than it needs to be, especially since there's an entire second floor full of apartments and an entire roof you can walk on. There is one thing that I enjoy doing in the apartments, and it starts with these random people in the Poké Center. Each man tells you something, then heads back to their apartment. They also give you something called O-Powers, which are little boosts you can use to help others online who are nearby, or you can also use them on yourself if you're selfish. It's a time-based event and we can't get into the apartments yet, but when we can, I'll elaborate on this a bit later.
I'm Steve.
The electric gym is quite a joke. I'm severely overleveled, and for this playthrough I've been actively trying to avoid battles, and yet I'm still somehow this overleveled. The game kind of branches out here. Since Mauville has routes going in all directions, it provides a moment of non-linearity in our progression. And my god, does Pokemon f this up every time. Since there are so many routes of exploration, the game kind of slows its level progression down. Why? Because this game is so scared to challenge its players. It doesn't know how hard to make the gym because the player can explore Verdant Turf to the left, he can explore the short path to the right, he can explore the top path until the rocks and gain so many levels beforehand. But also at the same time, the gym is open after you beat Wally, so the player might not do that and choose to do the gym first. If I were Game Freak, I would adjust the level to the player who explored Verdant Turf in the other routes because it rewards exploration and punishes those that don't. Those who didn't explore the optional towns would have a tougher time, and that's okay because it was their decision. I am always in favor of a game rewarding optional exploration, but Game Freak doesn't want to do that because it punishes those that don't, and therefore it makes the experience of the players who do explore a lot easier. This easy difficulty causes a lot of boredom, and I can attest to this because I am actively trying to avoid trainers and am still overleveled. I would rather have a completely linear Pokemon game if it meant having a higher difficulty, kind of like Pokemon Black and White's progression. The region was a straight line, but it still had so many different surrounding areas for people to explore. Challenges make a game more memorable. Look at Legends Arceus for example. The fight with Volo and Giratina. That was one of the sickest moments in the franchise, but also, it was really hard. You cannot make a game with exploration easy. The player must learn non-linearity through the challenges that come with straying away from the main mission. Speaking of exploration, let's talk Verdant Turf, the place Wally moved to. A little interesting thing you can do here is find this little girl Shroomish. She gives you this intriguing stone, and though never explained, you take it back to Rustboro and give it to the president. Turns out this is a Pidgeotite, something that will be used for Mega Evolution, but since we can't Mega Evolve, isn't of importance right now. On the way to Verdant Turf is the Daycare Center, a place where you leave Pokemon to get stronger. One step taken is one experience point. My only problem with the daycare is that if it crosses a level that learns a move, it will automatically get rid of one of your moves for you, specifically the oldest move it has. But that's not the main reason people use this. It's actually for breeding. A very complicated process that can be better explained by someone who actively breeds, but the benefits of breeding are egg moves a Pokemon may get, and IVs you may want a Pokemon to have. With everything done in the Mauville area, our next desired destination is north, in which we need Rock Smash. The Windstrait family here is an optional gauntlet in which you have to take on every member of the family with no breaks in between. Once you defeat them all, they start talking about how someone in their family is currently taking on the Pokemon League. And no, this is not Steven. Steven's last name is Stone, not Windstrait, just to clear that up. There is no pickup as to who this is, so as far as I'm concerned, it could literally be any random trainer on Victory Road. Meeting up with May, we see Mount Chimney. The main landmark will be around for the next part of the game. This ledge leads over to the next town we're supposed to get to, but is covered thanks to these ledges. I have no problem with the game correctly guiding you to the next checkpoint you're supposed to get to, but wouldn't this be a massive inconvenience to the people living here? Like, the only way you can get out of your town is by this ledge or the tram at the top of the mountain. The only way to get back to Lava Ridge Town is also this tram, then go all the way down the mountain, and I don't know why the f you would want to live here. Even funnier is that Team Magma is blocking the only way to get to Lava Ridge, so they are accidentally taking an entire town hostage. This does bring up the point of transportation. What if the tram is under maintenance or breaks down? How would people get back to their homes? Because Team Antagonist is blocking the tram, we have to go through the mountain, which actually leads us to a different town. But before that, we run into Indiana Jones. He introduces us to secret bases, a mechanic that was here even in Ruby and Sapphire, but in my opinion done way better in Aura simply because online play has evolved since the Game Boy. I like this guy simply because he gives you the TM for secret bases, tells you how secret bases work, and then leaves. You see him again, but he's helpful and concise. Why can't all people in the Pokemon region be like this? Moving on to the Ashy route, May heals our Pokemon despite a rest house being behind her that we just used. In this house, we get a glass blower who can make flutes for us if we collect him a certain amount of ash. These flutes can save us money because they can do different things like wake Pokemon up, snap them out of confusion, and the small things like that. Very situational, but also glad that something like this does exist. Fall Arbor Town has their own local professor who goes by the name of Cosmo, like the Fairly Odd Parent. He went off with Team Magma to Meteor Falls, not because he was kidnapped, but because someone was interested in his studies. This guy is so lonely that he is willing to talk to established evil organizations about science.
Oh, hell no, man. What the?
On the way to the mountain, we meet Lynette. Just kidding, this is optional. She created the box system that we use at the Poke Center. I really don't understand how one puts a living creature inside a PC, but yet it's one of those things where it'll be better off if I just accept it as is. In the cave, May calls some of the grunts bozos, which is like, damn girl, those kind of words can hurt a man. Next time you run into a terrorist, call him a bozo and tell me how that works out. Team Magma's admin, Tabitha, which I'm pretty sure is a woman's name, is after Cosmo's meteorite. We're forced into a double battle between Tabitha and a grunt, while May joins our side. While I appreciate this fight for narrative reasons, having to do a double battle with an AI kind of sucks. Since you have no control over what they can do, you spend more time basing your strategy trying to predict what they'll do instead of cooperating in attack strategy. After defeating them, Team Aqua shows up. If you're playing Alpha Sapphire, this will be Team Magma. I actually like that they acknowledge both teams within one game and exist at the same time instead of just treating them as teams in alternate timelines. In fact, Archie and Maxie used to work together in a team before they split up. In a very poorly animated sequence, Team Magma steals the meteorite anyways and runs off. You cut back to Fall Arbor Town where May offers to take you back to Mauville. I genuinely hate this option because there's so much left to explore in Fall Arbor, but for some odd reason this game just doesn't want you to explore the region they designed. There's more Meteor Falls and even more routes past the cave for you to explore, but if you choose to go back with May, you have to run all the way back, and at that point it's just tedious. It's almost as if the game designers don't want you to explore the games they created. But what's even dumber is that if you do warp back with May, she mentions that Mount Chimney is our next destination. So she just actively took us further away from our destination compared to if we said no. It actually boggles my mind how things like this are greenlit in a video game. Going to the top of the mountain, Team Magma and Aqua are fighting each other, leaving most of the grunts busy, but still needing to fight Tabitha in order to get Maxie at the top. I think having to fight Tabitha is a choice, especially since we literally just fought him. Maxie wants to turn the meteorite into a Megastone in hopes that it will work on Groudon. Unfortunately, that's not how Mega Evolution works, so why are we even here? In the original games, he actually wanted to use the meteorite to expand the landmass by making the volcano erupt. It's established that meteorites are the origin of Megastones, so this dialogue makes a bit more sense in terms of story progression. We have our first battle with the leader of Team Magma, and to be honest, it's quite underwhelming. His Pokemon are quite weak for this point in the game, or it might just be me over-leveled once again. I will admit, Maxie makes up for his levels by his strategy and his
exaggerated swagger of a black teen.
I actually had to use my first item in this fight because of his Mightyena. I hate it when people refer to themselves in the third person. This shit looks so stupid, especially since Maxie looks cool. In order to get to Lava Ridge, you must go down the Jagged Pass, and in order to get absolutely everything from this route, you have to have both bikes, which means going back to Mauville and coming back through the cable car because you can't go up this ledge. Lava Ridge is a pretty low-key place. It's probably the first place in Pokemon where I could say, yeah, I'd live here. I mean, they literally have hot springs as part of their Poke Centers. Even though 5 minutes ago I just complained about the regional design, I would still choose to live here.
You gotta give him that huck and spit on that thing.
The gym leader Flannery is a new gym leader, and because she's new, she believes there's this expectation that she needs to live up to. Therefore, she's sloppy and erratic in her skills as a gym leader. It's almost as if she lives by this rule as a gym leader that she must perform to these standards. If you want to learn more about this rule, look up Flannery Rule 34. After her defeat, she realizes that she needs to calm down and act more natural, which is a nice little arc in such a small time. I can appreciate this tiny arc because those emotions and slip-ups make her feel more human than the other characters. Walking out of the gym, we have to have another conversation with May. She gives you the goggles that we need to head into the Sandstorm on Route 111. But May wants us to go to Petalburg with her. So to get this straight, you receive an item for a new route, and the game wants to take you all the way back to Petalburg so you can't explore the thing you just got. Why is this game like this? Of course I'm not going with you. I want to explore the new area you just gave me access to. I get the game is trying to hold your hand and direct you where you need to go, but we are 4 badges in. That's basically mid-game at this point. I am starting to actually question why I like this game as a kid. Actually, I know why I liked it so much. It's because Pokemon is a series where I can just turn my brain off and have fun cruising through it. But when I have to actually critically think about these games and their weird decisions, it makes me realize, holy shit, there are glaring problems everywhere I go in this game. Pokemon is a franchise that has never been good with their narratives. It's always been the nostalgia and those warm, fuzzy feelings you get, not the complex storytelling and life-changing messages you're supposed to get. And I think that's why when I record footage for these games, my experience is a lot less enjoyable. It's because I'm playing the game with my brain actively trying to look for topics to discuss, looking for things to critique and compliment constantly. Pokemon games are not meant to be played this way. They're supposed to be fun games without much thought put into them. And that is how I usually play this game, which is why I grew up playing these games so much. It's because this game in particular lets you just pick up and play without any real stakes. It's the most casual game experience, while also letting people do their Nuzlockes and extra rules. Anyways, enough ranting, we gotta talk about the sand area because that's where the fossil Pokemon are. Armaldo and Cradily are some of the weirdest but coolest Pokemon I've ever seen. I personally enjoy Cradily just because Grass Rock is a weird but unique type. There are some good Pokemon to find here, which is why I made such a big deal about May taking you back to Petalburg. You are skipping a very good place to explore by doing so. I mean, you can always come back, but once you go to Petalburg, it's a very long road to walk just to get back here. So might as well do it now. You can go back to Rustboro and get the fossils revived at Devon Corporation, which isn't bad at all. You can immediately add the fossil Pokemon to your team if you want to. Back in Petalburg, we finally get to challenge our dad in a gym fight, but before that, we gotta go through a bunch of ace trainers who use buffing items. Not to mention, this gym is a normal type gym. They use X items on the first turn, but oddly enough, each trainer only has 1 Pokemon, so it's very easy to knock out their Pokemon before they even get to do anything. I feel like with a better setup, this kind of gym test could have been more effective. Not only would it shown off how useful X items can be, but it would have been difficult because after all, this is the 5th gym in the game.
Get my dad! Wookie, wookie, wookie!
Norman has some tough Pokemon, I must admit. 2 Slackings are no joke, but 1 fighting type or a type that resists normal, and this gym is a breeze. I don't know why this pisses me off so much, but after you beat your dad in a gym fight, he goes, "I lost? To Clay?" Or whatever you named yourself in the game. Like, dude, what? Did you think I was dog shit at fighting or something? Is losing to your son the worst thing that's ever happened to you? He doesn't say the usual dad stuff like, "That's my boy," or "You've grown so much, son." He's just like, "I see. So that's how it is." What? Yeah, bro, just give me my gym badge. Outside of the gym, Wally appears with his dad and he gives you Surf, which unlocks basically half the region. And this guy isn't even my actual father. But to be fair, I enjoy the segment where the 2 parents talk about how they are both happy and worried about their children going on journeys, since the Pokemon games always talk about growth, not only as trainers, but as people. God Fucking damn it, why did you force me to go to Mauville? You literally just gave me an HM that unlocks the entire bottom half of the region, and you're not gonna let me explore the fucking region you designed! I'm not even given the option to say no, you just make me go to Mauville! Not only are the routes near Dewford, but there are tons of ponds and places with water that you can now access. But no! This ass green-haired kid is afraid to walk alone. Buddy, I'm not your rival. I got a chick who said we could maybe be friends when I first met her. She clearly wanted me, but instead I gotta deal with your blocking. This game hates the idea of the player having free will. This game hates the fact that there are people who want to explore the game for just a bit. This game hates the fact that not everybody needs to be held like a toddler when playing the game. Not to mention, we don't have the fly HM at this point in the game, so I have to bike all the way back to these locations. How the hell does a linear game do a better job at letting a player explore the region than Omega Ruby? Trying to end this on a positive note, I always found it sort of significant that your dad was the last gym of the mainland. To the right of Mauville is the eastern part of Hoenn, a separate island that once again negates all sort of world building. Because, like, how are the Eastern Islanders supposed to get to the Western Island? But, whatever. I don't even care at this point, man. I'm getting too off topic. What I was trying to say is that your dad being the last mainland gym and then having you surf to the Eastern Island is kind of like this significant send-off. All familiarity is gone, and this adventurous spirit starts to rise as you're like, yeah, I just beat my dad in a gym, and I'm on this new island. This is where the journey really starts. And this feeling is immediately reinforced with Steven Stone showing up. Latias, or Latios, depending on which version you're playing, shows up and Pokemon Whisperer Steven says that something is wrong. You then get whisked away to Southern Island. Dude, imagine if the entire game had this much detail. The reason you're sent here is because Team Magma is trying to capture Latios. Apparently Latios holds the secret to Mega Evolution, as explained by the second admin of Team Magma. This chick is so weird. The way she says things, it's almost like she's stereotyping those anime cliches while still trying to be human. Who the f just sits there and goes, deleting? Even worse, after you beat her, she makes a slurping noise with a musical note. This has gotta be something sexual. There is no other explanation. Who the f slurps at a 13-year-old kid? What? Dude, I ain't a freak, but she's got me jumping in my chair. This is not a real person. This has got to be one of those AI people from Blade Runner. Like Ana de Armas type shit. Not to mention, she says this one line before leaving mentioning, you, forever. Dude, she wants us. After Team Magma leaves, you are forcefully given a legendary Pokemon capable of Mega Evolving. You have to send a Pokemon back to your PC that isn't Latias or Latios. Usually legendaries are supposed to be extremely hard to catch, but not here. It's just gifted to you. I'm already not a big fan of gifted Pokemon, especially after X and Y's disaster class. But this is even worse than that. Not to mention this is where we get our Mega Evolution bracelet. This lets us Mega Evolve the Pokemon capable of doing so. Now you might be watching this video saying, oh, well, just don't use the legendary Pokemon then. But then that begs the question, why give it to us? What my problem is with the newer games is that they make it too easy to break the game. Or as one might say, it's too easy to make the game too easy. The EXP share, the free legendary, telling the player every opportunity that they get on how to easily get past an obstacle are all big offenders that make the game easier than it needs to be. Of course, there are personal limiters like handicaps or Nuzlockes like I mentioned, but there is no incentive to do so other than to make the game interesting for the player themselves. Just playing the game naturally has me almost 10 levels higher than where I should be for every Pokemon. Let's be honest with ourselves, when a game becomes too easy, it becomes unengaging and boring to play. No challenge makes the game feel like a waste of time and not worth playing. But because there is no absolute definition to too easy, things like this will continue to happen, and it unfortunately all starts with this generation. To the right is Route 123, and where many people go for berries, as the Berry Master lives here. His field contains many berries and a nice dedicated place to grow your own berries, as there are lots of spots for you to grow berries. In this new special grass, there are horde encounters where you run into 5 weaker Pokemon. And when I say weaker, I mean extremely weak for where you are. I really hate horde encounters, especially because they slow the game down if you don't have a move that hits more than one target. Not even that, but the game can't even handle having 6 Pokemons on screen. I know Pokemon has never been known for their graphical advancements, but this is just embarrassing. At the Weather Institution, Team Magma is gathering data on unusual weather patterns in the history of Hoenn's weather. For once, you can actually pinpoint at the moment why Team Magma is invading somewhere. You have no idea why Maxie wants the Devon parts in Slateport at the moment. You have no idea why Maxie wants Mega Evolution at the volcano. But the Weather Institution actually makes sense at the moment for the player. Spoiler alert, the volcano fight is actually stupid because Groudon can't even Mega Evolve. It's explained that Groudon goes through something called Primal Reversion, which is an entirely different thing than Mega Evolving. This is also the moment where we can see Tabitha start to doubt Maxie's plan. So what does he do? Well, nothing. He keeps this info to himself. Nice one, admin. Also, he tells us they're at Mount Pyre. The Weather Institute is genuinely the first destination to me that makes sense for a team like Team Magma to be infiltrating. Weather is the core of this region in the entire story, but the whole infiltrating part is completely undercut by the fact that the player can rest in these 2 beds whenever they want, removing any sort of challenge or gauntlet feeling one might have. As a reward for defeating Team Magma, you get a cast form, a gimmick Pokemon that changes form based on the weather conditions around it, which is an interesting idea until you realize that that's the only thing it has going for it. Moving past the Weather Institute, we run into May again, and she's been looking all over for me. Maybe if that stupid-ass green-haired kid Wally didn't force me to go anywhere with him, you wouldn't be looking for me. Who knows? She still only has 3 Pokemon, with none of them being in the final stage of their evolution. What are we doing here? Your rival is supposed to be the person who puts you in check. Your rival is supposed to be the person who is 1 step ahead and lets the player know, hey, this is where you should be. I checked her Pokemon's levels from Ruby and Sapphire, and they're even lower. So at this point, I know it's just straight up a leveling issue in this game specifically. That is concrete evidence. Her levels are higher in Omega Ruby, and I'm still way too overleveled for this. I've been complaining for a long time, and I think we can stop right there, because we've arrived in the coolest town in the game, that being Fortree City, home of the Secret Base Guild. Now, I love secret bases. Back when the 3DS was super huge and Omega Ruby was the hottest game, I used to run the secret bases like a demon. Secret bases have been accessible to us for a while now, but I wanted to wait until we got to Fortree because Indiana Jones here finally talks about the online features that secret bases have. But because I never explained secret bases to begin with, let's start there. A Pokemon in your party needs to know secret power. You can go up to certain trees, bushes, and cave spots and make a secret base. All of them have a different layout and possibly a second floor or a gap that needs to be filled with a certain item. You can only have 1 secret base at a time, but you can still check out other spots and see if you want to move out into a new spot. It's nice that you don't have to move just because you open a new spot. Once settled in, you can decorate your base. There are mats, desks, chairs, dolls, traps, and many other miscellaneous things you can put in your base. There's also this flag here. You want to protect this, or at least make it hard to get to, because other people are trying to collect your flag. More flags means more things for you to buy at the Fortree Guild. Not only that, but this guy will give you items based on how many flags you've captured. These 5 spots are where you can put trainers. In order to have trainers in your base, you have to find the captain of another secret base, challenge them, then ask them to be a trainer in your secret base. To find another person's secret base, you may be able to see a bush or a cave or a tree that is open, and since you know that it's not yours, it's someone else's. I like exploring other bases to see how creative people got with their given layout and how hard it is to get to their flag. You can also see people's personal records on their minigames within their secret base and can try to beat it. The flags really only get you more items, and once you reach a new rank, the color of your flag changes. It goes from regular to bronze to silver to gold and then finally platinum. For getting 1,000 flags captured, you get a Garchompite. This gives you access to Mega Garchomp. If you're playing this in 2025, I'm sorry for your loss. The secret base side mode has to be in my top 2 side modes of all time, only behind the underground area in Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. It's so fun to just run through these bases, and not only that, but decorate your own base. It reminds me of a simpler time. When I was a kid, I made pillow forts in the living room. This gives me the same feeling. Not only are secret bases nostalgic, but it encourages you to explore previous routes because these spots are scattered all over the region. You can see so many layouts that we've passed and see if you like that layout and make a whole new base and repeat the process just for the fun of it. That's what I enjoy about effective side modes, is that they're just fun to play while also remaining very Pokemon-like. Fortree itself shows this off by being a town of tree houses. That would be a child's dream town and one of the reasons it's so memorable. I think having the Secret Base Guild be home to a place like this, it's like peanut butter and jelly if I'm being honest. The people talk about what it's like living in the treehouse, telling us both pros and cons, like how it's easier to get closer to your Pokemon in a nature-rich environment. But because the houses are trees, many wild Pokemon fly in on their own will, which would be quite a disaster at nighttime. The gym is blocked by an invisible object, so in the meantime we follow Steven onto the next route. He has this cool item called the Devon Scope, and it allows us to see invisible Pokemon, namely Kecleon, that have blended into the surroundings. I like the way they bring focus into one specific Pokemon, because while Kecleon isn't a very strong Pokemon, they're memorable because of the way they're introduced. Not every Pokemon gets their own cutscene, but this one does. The gimmick of Kecleon in battle is that it changes its type to the move it was just hit with. So while it starts out normal type, if you hit it with the water type, it'll change to the water type, now taking super effective damage from grass and such. Alongside the Devon Scope, we are given the Mega Evolution for our starter. To showcase what Mega Evolution does, we're gonna f up this Swablu real quick. Mega Evolution is the best thing that has ever happened to this game. Only certain Pokemon can Mega Evolve though. For the team that I am using, 4 out of 6 of them can Mega Evolve. Now when Pokemon Mega Evolve, they don't just become cooler, they also go through many changes. I know Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon said that Mega Evolution causes pain to certain Pokemon, such as Gyarados, Aerodactyl, and Sableye, but I would like to counter this by saying Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee focus on the positives of Mega Evolution. I don't know, I just wanted to state that. One of these changes are stat changes. The Pokemon being Mega Evolved will gain 100 stat points distributed in a certain way. A majority of these points will be distributed into their strongest base stat, making them even better at what they are supposed to be great at. For example, Swampert's physical attack skyrockets after Mega Evolution. Another change Pokemon go through are abilities. Most Mega Evolved Pokemon have their abilities changed. Swampert's Torrent ability changes into Swift Swim in its Mega Evolved form. Only Tyranitar, Medicham, and Abomasnow keep their abilities, and Scizor if its ability is already Technician. The final change that Pokemon may go through is a type change. Some Pokemon gain, change, or remove a type in these forms. Aggron becomes a pure Steel type, removing its Rock type when Mega Evolved. Altaria goes from Dragon Flying to Dragon Fairy in its Mega form, and Sceptile gains the Dragon type in its Mega, becoming Grass Dragon. What I especially love about Mega Evolution is that it gives the chance for weaker Pokemon to become useful. Altaria, in my opinion, isn't really that good of a Dragon type, simply being outclassed by Pokemon like Flygon or Salamence. But because it becomes Dragon Fairy in its Mega form, it can handle itself against the other Dragon types, making it all the more useful. Absol becomes an absolute beast in its Mega form, having insane physical attack and speed to decimate anything in its way. I just wish the already strong Pokemon didn't receive Megas. Garchomp, Tyranitar, Metagross, and Salamence are already pseudo-legendaries and they got even stronger. The terrible balance in Pokemon's fighting system gets even worse when you give the already strong and popular Pokemon more strength. That would be my only problem with Mega Evolution. Pokemon like Beedrill, Audino, and Altaria are bad Pokemon that get a Mega Evolution. And if more bad Pokemon were given that opportunity, then it would give a reason for players to try and use them. Onto some more exploring. I like when designated locations are given what seems like nothing, but come back and they host a legendary. There's this mythology involved that gives a place a reason to exist within a game, despite there being nothing at first glance. The legendary Pokemon Heatran can be found here in the postgame, for example. The Scorch Slab is based on a place where the goddess Amaterasu shut herself in, thus being why it is so hot in here according to Japanese mythology. These kind of places are memorable not only because of the cool story surrounding them, but the fact that they host a legendary. I love when exploring a cave leads to a legendary because it feels like such a reward and also begs the question, why specifically this cave? That might just be me, but I tend to look these things up. Going back to Fortree, we can finally challenge the gym with the Devon Scope in hand. The flying type gym is the first victim of our Mega Swampert and Rock Slide. Before I go into this fight, what the f is this opening sequence with Winona?
Can we get much higher? So high.
Now, under normal circumstances, Winona's Altaria would be scary, but they got rid of Altaria's Dragon Dance, which is so dumb. Also, why doesn't her Skarmory lead out to use spikes? There are so many simple order issues that make her weaker than she's supposed to be. Imagine if they gave her Swellow a Focus Sash, so her Endeavor Quick Attack moveset could be useful. I get not wanting to put an item on a gym leader because none of the gym leaders have items at this point, but the ordering is really what makes me wonder what could have been. Anyways, done with Amelia Earhart, I decided to fill my team and go all the way back to catch an Aeron because I realized I didn't want any of the Pokemon later on in the game. So I technically could have had this thing since the beginning, but I didn't. So now we have our full permanent team. Tsunami the Swampert, Daddy Pig the Grumpig, Haley Welch the Cradilly, Cloud9 the Altaria, Marceline the Absol, and Adam the Aggron, who isn't there yet. Also, shout out to the people who get the Adam reference. Goated movie right there. Heading south, we eventually arrive at Mount Pyre, which is this mountain that revolves around death and Pokemon. I never understand why, but as Pokemon has evolved, they've strayed away from these kinds of locations. I remember the Pokemon Tower getting turned into a radio station in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, but Mount Pyre stays the same here, maybe because it's a stable part of the story. I find it odd that media keeps us away from the concept of death, especially because it's one of the few universal things we experience. Humans, insects, dogs, cats, everyone experiences death. Especially since these areas are created for people to mourn their lost loved Pokemon. Cemeteries are created so that we can bury the dead, but we don't shy away from those places. I mean, where I live, if I go downtown, I can pass by 2 of them on the side of the street. At the top of the summit, Maxie takes the red orb and you are given the blue orb. And thank God this has changed. In the original games, Maxie takes the blue orb and when he tries to use it on Groudon, it upsets him. Which is by far the dumbest thing to ever occur in a Pokemon game. You are a fully grown adult man and you couldn't use a single brain cell to figure out that red correlated with Groudon. I honestly forgot whether or not they made the change here, but thank God they did. If you talk to the man after Team Magma leaves, he gives you some lore about Groudon and Kyogre and the ancient history between them. I like that this isn't mandatory and something you can do on your own time. It is at the interest of the player to learn more about Groudon and Kyogre rather than being something that isn't exactly necessary for the plot, but being forced onto the player. They actually had to Slateport and steal Stern's submarine to go look for Groudon. Stern offers to warp you to Lily Cove, and for once in this game, I actually like a game warp. There's a sense of urgency in the plot right now because Maxie is close to finding Groudon. But since this is optional, it offers you 2 options. You can warp to Lily Cove but skip the routes ahead of Mount Pyre and before Lily Cove, or you could say no and take your time to explore those routes and then head to Lily Cove. For once, the plotline is actually helpful in giving us a reason to warp and skip areas. As much as I care about the story, I actually went to Lily Cove just to backtrack and explore the routes. The Safari Zone is a staple of Pokemon and where you can find Absol's Mega Evolution Stone. To this day, I will still defend my opinion about how Heart Gold and Soul Silver's Safari Zone is the best one out of any game. Omega Ruby doesn't even try at making a good Safari Zone. First thing, you don't even have to pay anymore, you can just walk in. I get that paying $500 was a slight inconvenience, but it just gave it that exclusive area feel to me, if that makes sense. Also of note is that you need both bikes to fully explore the Safari Zone, and because we can't have both bikes at once until the post-game, you'll need to wait a bit. However, there is a slight difference with the bikes. Having the Mach bike gives you access to Pinsir, whereas having the Acro bike gives you access to Heracross. I like how the bikes affect more than just what items you can get, and it is more reason to have a specific bike. Not to mention, you don't even get Safari Balls in this version. The Safari Zone acted as this luck-based way of catching Pokemon where you could increase odds of catching, but also increasing the chance of it running away, or decrease the chance of it running away while decreasing the chance of it being caught. Now, you just fight it as if it's a wild encounter. What's the point of having a Safari Zone if you're just going to remove all of its mechanics and features that made it a nature reserve rather than just any regular wild encounter. From what I know about remakes, removing a core mechanic that something is known for does not make that something better. Lily Cove is the final mainland town and is this coastal place that shifts the focus from land to sea, as that is our main purpose of travel after we're done here. I really like the scenic shot with the lighthouse, and I wish more towns gave these unique frames that made their town stick out more. Obviously, some places naturally stick out because of their unique way of life, but for those ordinary towns, this would be highly beneficial. We see May in Lily Cove and she challenges us to another fight. There are two things I didn't realize in this fight. One, this fight was completely optional in the originals, and two, this is the fight where she has a fully evolved starter. Not once does she have her starter fully evolved in the original games. Even in the optional fight, they are still in the second stage. So I can at least applaud them for the change made here to give her a fully evolved starter Pokemon to make her journey feel a bit more complete. May's dialogue after the fight is actually a bit tricky to digest here. She talks about how she wants to be on your level, but feels like that's basically impossible. She wants to be more involved in your journey, but because you are just leaps and bounds ahead of her, she feels as if it's impossible to continue trying to play a huge role. It's almost as if she herself is saying this game is way too easy. She's acknowledging that everything is very easy for us because, oh, I don't know, the game treats us as a protagonist, a contest star, a superhuman genius, instead of treating us as a 13-year-old. May returns to Littleroot acknowledging that her journey is different from yours, and I think that's actually a good message. She's not going back because she's weak or she failed at becoming strong, but rather she's going back because her journey isn't the same as yours. She just wants to research Pokemon and help her dad. We want to travel and get all the gym badges. Two completely different objectives. I think it's a good message for people because even within this game, people play Pokemon differently. While yes, the game forces you to get all the badges and become the champion, people progress towards that objective differently. There are some who actually fill the entire Pokedex and catch every Pokemon en route, whereas some people only catch Pokemon for their team. I mean, I only catch Pokemon of interest in the legendaries. Some people also don't do secret bases on their journey, some don't do contests, but some people are heavily involved in those side modes. There are many different ways someone can enjoy their journey despite being forced to one goal. I may be trying to make this deeper than it needs to be, but for the kids playing this game, because after all, Pokemon is a series for kids, I think it's a great message. For as much as I shit on Pokemon's writing and storytelling, they do have great bits and meaningful messages, but it's usually not where you expect them to be. You see these great bits of writing in the smaller, less impactful moments such as this one, which is probably why people don't talk about them as much. This also allows May to develop as a person with a different skill set rather than someone who's in your shadow or always one step behind. Anyways, enough about May because we won't see her for a while. We have this giant mall to stroll through. As per Pokemon tradition, there has to be a 6th floor mall with items galore. The ground floor is the lottery. The second floor is the basic items seen in every Pokemart. The third floor are vitamins that raise stats. The fourth floor sells TMs, and the fifth floor sells things for your secret base. Every now and then you can catch a guy in the roof having a clearance sale. He sells things for your secret base. There's a Pokemon fan club, and if you show the guy outside in Altaria, he gives the Mega Stone for Altaria to Mega Evolve. So now my team has all the Mega Stones needed for every member to Mega Evolve. Since there isn't much to do in Lily Cove, we can head off into the vast ocean that Team Magma is covering. Instead, we have to infiltrate their base because apparently they weren't chasing Groudon, they were waiting for the player so that they could tell us they were going to find Groudon. This is a personal complaint, not one that matters too much, but I prefer the layouts in Emerald. In Emerald, this would be Team Aqua's hideout, as Team Magma's hideout would actually be at Mount Chimney. There would be a tiny entrance on Jagged Pass and their layout was in the mountain, which is sick as hell. Since we are an Aversion exclusive though, we're only chasing one team. They use this hideout interchangeably. Like I said, it's not that big of a deal, I just like how it's done in Emerald. To its credit, this feels like the first actual dungeon in the game, where there are a bunch of trainers, a decently complicated puzzle, and no designated place for healing. In order to heal, it's all items are going back to the very beginning and going back to Lily Cove. This makes the player actually think about how they want to proceed because despite every trainer not sending out the strongest Pokemon, chip damage does add up and eventually will become a problem. I'm also just a huge fan of the warp panel layouts. They're super fun.
Ooh.
A reward for discovering all dead ends leads you to Maxie's room. It's exactly how you would expect his room to be, but this is important because it contains the Master Ball, a ball that catches any Pokemon without fail. Not really the thing I would have just laying around, but hey, they gotta give it to you somehow. Despite our efforts, Maxie still gets away and heads for the open water. And when I say open, god damn do I mean open. IGN gave this game a 7.8 and simply said too much water. And while this game narratively focuses on land versus sea, it kind of makes IGN look stupid, but in a way I can kind of see where they're coming from. The 17 sea routes this game has slows this game down significantly. And the fact that hardly any of these routes are locked behind some invisible walls means that while Maxie is out looking for Groudon, well, we can take our sweet ass time and explore all these routes. This throws away any sort of balance that existed, if there was any at this point. Not only are all these routes copy and pasted, but they are tedious to get through. You'll be encountering the same Pokemon for the remainder of the game. You will be fighting the same level of Pokemon for the remainder of the game. You will be exploring these boring and open routes with nothing to show for the remainder of the game. Someone tell me the difference between Route 127 and Route 128. Nothing. There is no difference. And if you are the type of person to say, well actually, there are different sand patches that the player can explore, then you're like 7 years old! Cause there's no way this entertains you. Fortnite is older than you, bro. It is crazy to me that people pass this just because it's for narrative purposes. I have praised a lot of things in this game for narrative purposes, but world design has nothing to do with Maxie wanting to wake up Groudon. It would be different if these routes were memorable or had something going for them, but they don't, and that's the honest truth. If you want to have a vast open world, you have to fill it with content. Otherwise, it becomes unbearable to go through. These routes may be short, but then at that point, it's like, why can't this just be labeled as one route? Kind of like how we call the large bodies of water the Pacific Ocean or the Atlantic Ocean, but they still have the smaller features like the Gulf of America. Yo, I low-key forgot they changed that to Gulf of America. I was just reading the map. But the point is, despite being smaller areas of water, they are part of the overbranching label of Atlantic Ocean. Why? Because it's a section of the world that we can identify. If I were trying to describe where California is on a map, I would say that it's on the Pacific Ocean side of America. That immediately gives someone a general idea of where California is in the United States. But if I were to ask you to go to Route 132 in Omega Ruby, please tell me on the map where that is without Googling or looking it up. Well, I don't know, because none of these routes stick out to you. I can remember the land routes just fine because despite being more confined and longer, each of them has distinct features that make them stand out. Route 113 has the volcanic ash. Route 111 has the desert you can go through. Route 110 is the bike path. Route 119 is the first instance in which we can see the tall grass. It is so blatant to me that the land routes were given much more thought and designed with a greater attention to detail than these water routes. What's worse with the sand patches is that you are constantly getting off your Pokemon to search for potential hidden items and then immediately hopping back on to go do the same thing. You have to mash the A button because we have to read the same text about the water being blue, the same animation for getting on your Pokemon, and then listen to this surf music that overtakes the route's theme. There are so many little nuances that add up and make exploring more irritating on water than land. The one thing I can compliment on is that the water encounters are less likely to happen. The one thing they fixed probably doesn't even matter because you can just use repels. With all this water comes the problem of too many water-type Pokemon, and while yes, water-type Pokemon are extremely abundant to begin with, Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire just makes the problem worse by letting even more water Pokemon into their Pokedex. While I can understand they do this to keep the regional design in check, it really makes certain Pokemon useless at this part of the game, because who in their right mind is going to send out a fire type when all you're doing is encountering water type after water type? Through all of this repetitiveness, we make it to Moss Deep, and while all my complaints just a minute ago were about exploration being unmemorable, I can't say the same for Moss Deep because it's probably the most memorable town in the game. There is a heavy interest in space for this town as there is a giant rocket and a dedicated center to space research. Not to mention the houses are drastically different to those on the mainland. The beach and water-based towns do a great job being unique, especially since everything around them is so bland. The gym in Moss Deep is the psychic type, and the leaders are these two twins who base themselves on the trope that twins can read each other's minds.
Prepare for trouble!
Make it double!
Liza and Tate make you do a double battle, and while I appreciate the idea of having someone do a double battle, the opportunity to make it a good double battle is completely wasted. The first problem is the fact that they only have one Pokemon each. Why even do a double battle at this point if there are no other Pokemon? Part of a double battle is not only to cooperate with your team, but also to send in a Pokemon with a good situation that it benefits from, thanks to the two Pokemon previously out. My second problem is that despite being a double battle, both Pokemon are the exact same type, that being Rock Psychic. This was the perfect opportunity to throw away the monotype gym thing for just the battle and focus solely on the double battle mechanic being presented. You changed the gym style already, why not go all in instead of half-assing it? I personally appreciate when the Pokemon games step out of the box for a minute and throw away their monotype gyms. Sabrina using a Venomoth with psychic moves being a primary example. Despite not being a psychic type, it still kind of made sense to have it and it fit the team dynamic at the time. Raihan is another gym leader who uses double battles and does it so much better. Despite being recognized as a dragon type user, I think the term weather-based team is a better fit because that is his strategy in his double battle. He uses Pokemon to set up and benefit from weather. The problem with double battles is that Pokemon journeys are not made for double battles, and because of that, our teams are built for single battles. So when a double battle randomly pops up out of nowhere, you're left just doing the same thing, and that's using a super effective move. The only real trick to double battles is not using moves like Surf or Earthquake, because those moves hurt your own team. If there was a dedicated space to double battles, such as a gym, then there could be way more strategy, or we could see team dynamics not usually presented through a main story. Going back to Raihan, not all of his Pokemon are Dragon type, so he's not exactly a Monotype gym. But because they went all in on the weather mechanic in using double battles, it is so much more effective than Liza and Tate. Pokemon Omega Ruby has the formula to fix the gym problem, but chooses not to, simply because of tradition. But this tradition isn't effective. If players are taught to not have a monotype team, then why should gyms be expected to be monotype? Instead, I propose a better solution. The gyms could be a place where each mechanic has a place to shine. One gym could be a double battle like this one. Norman's gym was a good example of using X items, and his fight could have also done the same, where he uses X items in his fight. Another gym can focus on different strategies like certain abilities or using setup moves. There are so many possibilities here, but because the expectation is for all the gyms to be monotype, people will complain when anything new happens. The Liza and Tate fight isn't even worth mentioning because, well, it's already over. The fight is that easy. And it's the 7th gym, and we are dealing with 2 Pokemon. Leaving the gym, we are met with the earth literally shaking because Team Magma has finally found Groudon. And apparently the stakes are supposed to be super high here. Here I go again, rant after rant. If the stakes were super high, why the hell did the game make me take on a gym? Maxie went to go find Groudon when we were present at their hideout, and the solution the game has is to have me take on a gym leader? Not even the game treats Team Magma as a real threat, because if the stakes were truly high, then we would have chased after Team Magma right after their escape in Lily Cove. Not just let them find an ancient beast capable of drying up the world. The inconsistencies of this game are so tragic that even when I was 10 I was questioning this. To prove my point that none of this f***ing matters, I'm gonna explore everything but the seafloor cavern, because we just got a new HM from Steven, who just coincidentally has all of this scuba gear for us. Shoal Cave is a place affected by the tide. Every 6 hours the tide will change from either low to high or high to low tide. Different tides give you different routes of exploration, and the objective here is to collect shoal salts and shoal shells. Once you've collected all of the salts and shells required, you can make a shell bell, which is an item that gradually restores HP every turn. You can get an infinite amount of these, but I barely care enough to get one because goddamn this cave is boring. During low tide, you can see the designated ice region full of the slide puzzles. I think Game Freak forgot that you can move diagonally because you can actually break these puzzles simply by not moving how you're supposed to. We couldn't fully explore Seamawville before, but now that we have Dive, we can access the entire ship. Sea Mauville is a man-made structure that eventually becomes a habitat for animals due to a certain incident that happened. Because Pokemon made it a habitat, it became an untouched nature reserve. I'd like to think that this is the opposite of the desert to show what would happen if Team Aqua got their desires instead. If you read around the place, there's a heavy implication of unbearable work conditions, which I guess can signify the Japanese work culture. It's odd to think that the only reason Sea Mauville was abandoned was because it became unprofitable. The people working here didn't care that it was harming the ocean and plundering its resources. All they cared about was the money that came from it. In a way, it justifies Archie saying that we should expand the ocean because of the pollution people cause without a care. It has been theorized that Archie and Maxie worked at Sea Mauville, which is why they are so protective of the land and sea, but split up because they couldn't decide which one needed more help. All of this information is given to you as you look for keys to unlock the sequence of doors. This information is rewarded to you for exploring an optional location. There is so much information and detail put into Sea Mauville that it feels like this place shouldn't even be a part of Pokemon. The quality of storytelling for this just feels superior to the rest of the game. And most people don't even come here because it's not important or worth exploring until the post-game. And even then, it's still optional. Dive is basically just another surf HM. You find a darkened spot of water, go down, and then when you find light, you go up. I do like how the underwater sections of this game do look, if I had to compliment anything. Underwater exploration allows you to go to locations not accessible by just having surf. You can find all sorts of blocked off locations and locations by going under the water, traveling for a bit and then coming back up. Of course, everything looks the same, but you are underwater for long, so you aren't looking at it for hours like you are above the water. The seafloor cavern features our long-time favorites, strength puzzles and many magma grunts. Why hasn't that new move evolved yet? I understand you want the player to know that these are grunts, but evolve your Pokemon. Or better yet, give them Pokemon that don't evolve. Shit, give them a Sableye, that'd be cool. At the end of the tunnel, we meet up with Maxie, who is about to wake up Groudon. But first, he goes through an entire monologue explaining what he's about to do. As I was reading the text, I realized how bizarre this entire story is. I still think the concept of humanity versus nature is a good one, but this plan to wake up Groudon and basically destroy the f***ing Earth has almost nothing to do with Pokemon itself. I think the reason why people like Black and White's story so much is because of how it directly correlates with the Pokemon themselves. It deals with animal abuse and morality, not only about the Pokemon but mental abuse within the organization in N. The story is intertwined with the mechanics. It directly questions whether your actions are morally right or if you're just enslaving these creatures at your desire, and is isolated from the world, and the Pokemon brought to him are ones hurt from their previous owners, giving him a skewed outlook on Pokemon trainers. Therefore, N grows up only around Pokemon, making it seem like he has another layer of understanding about Pokemon themselves, while simultaneously not knowing a whole lot about the relationship between Pokemon and trainers. This view is immediately challenged when he goes into the real world and meets your character. Spoiler alert, Getsus only does this to use N as a puppet in his grander plan of control over the world. Not by blowing up the earth like Maxie, but by convincing people that having Pokemon is a form of slavery. Getsus understands the power of Pokemon and understands that Pokemon are essential to their everyday lives. But by convincing people of the other perspective, they'll refuse to participate in slavery, therefore making him the only person capable of using Pokemon, since they'll eventually get rid of Pokeballs and such things that associate with animal abuse. Pokemon has always been about the relationship between humans and Pokemon, so when the story is something about like expanding the landmass or creating an entirely new world, it leaves a feeling inside me that goes, what the f*** is this guy on about? Yes, he is using a specific Pokemon to do this, but so much of the story is just explaining why they need Groudon or why they need to do this certain thing to achieve their goals, rather than crafting a story and it being explainable just by context. The difference between Team Plasma and Team Magma is that Team Magma isn't even villainous. They're just trying to solve an actual problem in the worst way possible. I am absolutely sure that there's an alternative solution to humanity versus nature, rather than just blowing up the f***ing world, but what do I know? For a guy who is so logical, this plan's ideology makes no sense. One of the biggest ways to illustrate that Maxie isn't even evil is the fact that he uses a Crobat, a Pokemon that evolves through max friendship. So obviously Maxie has to have taken great care of his Golbat to get it to evolve into a Crobat. Despite all of this, After you defeat Maxie, he does the dumbest thing possible in a game that is already incredibly stupid. Tabitha comes rushing in telling Maxie that if he awakens Groudon, the world is going to end. And he responds with, "Oh, so sad. Tabitha, I knew you always wanted to be the boss of Team Magma. But I, Maxie, don't give a f*** about what you think." And awakens Groudon anyways. We get this cutscene with accurately sized characters of Groudon immediately going loose and heading for a specific place above the water. Maxie gets a message from the members above saying that things are out of control and worse than anticipated. And Maxie's like, "Oh no, what have I done? The world's gonna end." Dude, what the f*** has everyone been trying to tell you? I hate that this game tries to make Maxie look super smart and logical when he's not. He's a f***ing dumbass. Archie at least looks like an idiot, so when he awakens Kyogre, it kinda makes sense, cause he just thinks irrationally. But Maxie over here is supposed to be the logical guy who underestimates the power of an ancient beast, and when he realizes he might have messed up, his solution is to be like, "Oh well, I awakened Groudon. What are you gonna do now?" And completely deflects any accountability. In the original games, Archie tries to be the only sensible person in the game and tells you that it's too dangerous for a kid to try and help more. Which is true, but naturally you do everything anyways. But in Omega Ruby, Archie negates all logic and reminds you once again that you are the protagonist. To make matters even worse, Steven magically appears out of the sky telling you that there's a crisis happening. Thanks, bro! I think I can tell by the way the sky is f***ing orange juice right now. I think this is the first time I've been actively mad at a game for being so bad at telling a story. Even worse is the only reason he shows up is to restate everything Archie just f***ing told us. God damn, does this game suck! Off to Sootopolis, we meet Wallace, the gym leader of this town and the protector of the Cave of Origin, which is apparently where Groudon is headed. We are stopped before actually going to the Cave of Origin because Steven over here wants to talk about the sun. There is actually no good reason for this cutscene to happen. Oh, sunlight is good for people, but too much? Well, that's not good. Dude, go f***ing jerk yourself off in a corner or something! Hey, did you know that humans can hold their breath underwater, but if you stay underwater for too long, you can drown? Did that really need to be stated at this moment? The world is about to explode, and you want to talk to yourself. This doesn't add anything to the story, it's just useless text to make Steven seem interesting. Steven's been asking stupid questions since we met him. It doesn't make him mysterious. Approaching the Cave of Origin, we get words of encouragement from everyone, and why the hell is May here? Even better is that you contribute absolutely nothing to the story and spend 3 minutes acting like someone experiencing a multiverse movie for the first time. Why are Team Aqua and Magma helping you? What is going on here? Is Wallace a woman or a man? Like, you aren't contributing anything important here. No one is. Do you know how much dialogue could be removed from the story and it still tells the same tale? A lot. A lot is the answer. As everyone gives you words of encouragement for 5 minutes, you can talk to them and they can give you the same words of encouragement. So the last 5 minutes of dialogue wasn't even important because they can say the exact same thing if you just talk to them. I know this sounds like I'm nitpicking every single detail here, but I've mentioned many times throughout this review how the tiny little nuances add up. And within the last 2 gyms, there have been enough nuances for me to just get up and stop playing the game because the game is so bad at telling a story and so bad at creating a dramatic setting. There is no dramatic setting because the entire time I've been playing this game, I've been told that I'm the best that's ever been. Steven, upon meeting you, says that you have what it takes to be the champion. The old couple at Mount Pyre gives you the blue orb because only you seem to fit to carry the burden to defeat Groudon. Maxie and Archie constantly tell you that you have this determination and will to defeat anyone and everyone in your way. A great way to create a dramatic setting is to do the complete opposite of this. Imagine this scenario. We, the player, are sent into the Cave of Origin, but instead of everyone believing you simply because you're the protagonist, Archie and Maxie have their doubts about you being able to accomplish the mission, while Steven and Wallace believe you can do it. So instead of all of this wasted dialogue of everyone encouraging you to stop Groudon, it's replaced with Steven's side debating with Maxie's side about why you should be the one to do it. There's conflict in this scenario. There's a belief that you can fail and make things worse. That adds stakes to the scenario. If everyone already knows you have the ability to defeat Groudon, what's the point of making this the climax? I'm once again going to spoil the game to make a point here. If you want to send the strongest trainer into the cave, why don't you send Steven in there? He's the champion of Hoenn. His job is to be the strongest trainer in Hoenn. So by that logic, he is very clearly stronger than me. But no, I'm the protagonist, so for some reason, no one else can do it. Only me. I think the reason why so many people don't like Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire is the fact that you are constantly reminded that you are the protagonist alongside the game being incredibly easy. There is no challenge in this game, and those two elements combined make the entire experience fall flat. A hero's journey, as we commonly see in storytelling, is defined by the hardships one goes through. But if there are no hardships, then it doesn't feel like a journey at all. As you go down the cave, frequent earthquakes erupt and build tension. Once you reach the bottom of the cave, Groudon willingly takes you to the deepest part of the cave by letting you ride his back. What? This is what I mean when I say this game treats you like a protagonist. What is stopping Groudon from WWE slamming me into the lava right now? Nothing! It's a wild animal! You know what? Never mind. Primal Reversion was just the thing Groudon needed. In Generation 3, Groudon was a pure ground type, meaning that both Kyogre and Rayquaza had the type advantage over it. This also meant that Groudon didn't exactly benefit from the weather effect it brought. Drought primarily helps fire types, and while yes, Groudon had fire type moves, Kyogre brought Drizzle, which brought in rain, so it benefited from type and moves. Now that Groudon has Primal Reversion, the ability is Desolate Land. It permanently helps fire types and overrides any other weather effects in place, even Kyogre's ability. So not only does Groudon get the proper buff from becoming fire type, but now it goes back to the weather effects actually mattering. Water may have the type advantage, but fire has the weather advantage. Not to mention Primal Reversion actually gives the red orb and blue orb a reason to exist. You use the red orb to activate the Primal Reversion process, whereas in Ruby and Sapphire, it was only used to awaken Groudon and Kyogre. Anyways, you defeat or catch Groudon and the cave destroys itself. This large beam is sent into the sky and is turned back into normal. Archie and Maxie talk about their problems and realize their own ways of thinking, and stubbornness is what resulted in conflict. Archie only thought about a world with Pokemon, and Maxie only thought of a world with people, but it was the younger generation that showed them a third option in which people and Pokemon can coexist. Maxie realizes that he can't run away from the problems he's caused and must atone for his sins, and then everyone leaves. I honestly couldn't care less because this entire story is stupid. I'm gonna say it up front. I think the idea of humanity versus nature is great for a Pokemon game, but as far as I'm concerned, I could not give less of a shit about this climax and ending. In my personal opinion, if you are going to make over half of this game based around Team Magma and Groudon, then the story should mean something to the player. Because after all of this, I feel like I've accomplished nothing. I don't care about anything that has happened, and that's a problem. There's no personal stake in this story. There is absolutely no reason for us to be here other than the fact that we're the main character. We have no relationship with either team leader. The only reason you are here is because you just happened to be at the right moment every time Team Magma appeared. Plot lines constantly appear and resolve by themselves throughout our journey, and we're really only here to watch. I mean, after we defeated Maxie, he went and awakened Groudon anyways. Because why wouldn't he? Because he lost at a game of Pokemon? There is no reason for him to rethink his life because we have no relationship to him. We don't know him. The entire story is just Team Magma explaining to you the history of these ancient Pokemon and then telling you where they're going. So yes, I am going to sit here and complain that a game's story is dumb, when all the game does is try to explain its shitty story. If the story is the main focus of the game, then that's where a majority of the quality should be. So when I say I don't feel anything after experiencing the end of the main story, that means the game failed at what it was trying to accomplish. It failed at the thing they put the most effort in. Another thing that I hate is the fact that every Pokemon story has to finish before the 8th gym. In what way does a game benefit from ending the story with 6 bosses left? It makes the rest of the game feel hollow, like it has less importance now that the main conflict with the antagonist is over. Another reason why people appreciate Black and White is because the conflict with Team Plasma doesn't end at the 7th gym. N becomes the champion of Unova, and the final battle is between you representing your values and N the champion representing his values. I know Getsus is technically the final fight, but having the story end with the champion creates the dramatic setting naturally. The main story ends after defeating the champion. That is what should happen if your Pokemon game is story-oriented. In this 8th gym, we fight even more water types as if we haven't faced enough already. I actually really like the gym's puzzles, as if you fail, you're required to fight trainers. Or you could just go willingly down there and beat them because you want to.
Hello, how are you? I am under the water.
Wallace, where do I begin? Let's start with your love disc. You are the last gym, and you are using a love disc. Do I even need to go over this gym? You get the last HM required, which is Waterfall. So 3 water-based HMs in this region. I am so glad they got rid of HMs in the later games. Wallace tells us that Professor Birch has something to say to us, so we go back and get the national dex. Apparently Groudon's incident changed Pokemon's ecology, and now a lot of them ended up here. Sure, alright, whatever gets me the national dex. Exploring the region because we got a new HM, Watson invites us to the Mauville apartments. But first, remember these guys? We can now visit them in their apartments. After talking to every single man, you can go up into an apartment and there will be a depressed man. After talking to the depressed man, go to the apartment with all the funny guys and they'll ask you to bring the sad man to their apartment. Once you do so, all of the funny men give their depressed coworker their O-power and he becomes a new man.
Exaggerated swagger of a black teen.
I don't know, dude. This entire sequence makes no sense, but I think that's why I like it. Now that we've done that little side quest, we can fulfill Watson's wish and go to New Mauville. New Mauville was going to be an underground city that unfortunately never worked out and shut down around the same time as Sea Mauville. Watson wants you to do something with the power, and that's it. Pacific Log Town is a town made on top of a coral reef and is pretty interesting if I must say so myself. The reason I remember this town is because of this kid who asks you where you're from, and the only options given to you are yes and no. Great game design, I gotta say. He even answers your questions, so this was a deliberate process that Game Freak chose to keep in. Now that Groudon and Kyogre have been dealt with, we can actually start our legendary hunt. So we'll be starting with the Reggies in the sealed chamber. First, you need a Relicanth and a Wailord. Second, you will need to know Braille. I'm just kidding, you don't need to know Braille, but there will be a decoding puzzle in which one must know the basic letters. They do give you the alphabet in Braille to help you, but most people look it up, which is kinda lame. I remember the Ruby and Sapphire instruction books actually having the alphabet and you could look there, but those don't come by easily. The wall at the back says dig here, so the player must use the move dig in front of the wall to open it up. In the second area, you see a bunch of destroyed murals, which to me implies that there was an ancient civilization at some point that was destroyed by the legendary Pokemon that we are currently chasing. I may not be entirely correct, but if you want to take the time to read all of the murals yourself, I would encourage that. In order to open this second door, you need Relicanth in the first slot of your party and a Wailord in the last slot. It seems a bit odd, but it makes sense after a bit of thinking because both of these Pokemon have ancient ties. They've been around the longest and would have probably still existed during the times in which these ancient cities were filled with people. None of the Pokemon are actually in the sealed chamber. When you hear those doors open far away, they're locations that we've already been to, but not where we are currently. Regice is locked away on Route 105 north of Dewford. The island cave requires you to stay on the text screen for 2 minutes without touching anything for the door to be unlocked. Once the quest is completed, you have the ability to catch Regice. Regirock is located in the desert. That one suspicious spot that changes the camera angle actually held a legendary Pokemon. A great bit of foreshadowing done on the game's part. The braille here reads, right, down, down, then use your strength, implying that the person needs to use their strength HM. Once completed, you have access to Regirock. The final one is Registeel, who is located on Route 120. In order to unlock, you must use Fly in the middle of the room. Once completed, you have access to Registeel. So how many of you knew you could catch Regigigas in Pokemon Omega Ruby? I'd assume a lot since it's on Bulbapedia, but the only clue in the game to tell you that Regigigas exists is this little girl in Pacific Log Town. She tells you all the clues she was told as a child, like giving Regice a nickname and giving it an ice-based item, as well as having all three of them in your party. Only this child tells you that, which is so niche but makes the legend of Regigigas so much cooler. When the game makes an actual legend feel obscure, it makes finding him more rewarding because of the fact that it's so hidden. Going back to the island cave with all of the requirements met, you can find Regigigas and catch all of the Titans. I mentioned Heatran in the Scorched Slab. Flannery is here to tell us that Heatran has arrived and is now catchable. I'm not the biggest fan of the locations having a portal to the Pokemon. I think it would have been way better to have Heatran's 3D model sitting here waiting for you, kind of like how they did it in the DS games. I understand that the portal directly correlates to the legend of Hoopa, but I'm just not a big fan of the portals in general. You can unlock Ho-Oh at Seamawville by doing a series of errands for a scientist there. You need to find the scanner at the bottom of the ship, and once you do that, you can find a portal to Ho-Oh at the nose of the ship. You can also find Spiritomb in Seamawville, and I have to say, this is the first time I actually got confused on what Pokemon are trying to make me do. You have to enter this room, then search the bed, then search the bookshelf. Once you read about the odd keystone, you have to go into your bag and then exit. I have no idea why this puzzle was set up like this and how it correlates to Spiritomb. The only conclusion I can think of is that it appears when you're doing something busy and then you turn around and it's supposed to be this jump scare. I don't really know what they're trying here. Please save before trying to catch the Spiritomb, because it constantly knocks itself out by using Memento, which is a terrible move to put on a Pokemon you can only encounter once a game. If you have the Eon ticket, you can go back to the southern island and catch Latias. And I'm going to be completely honest, I have no idea how you get the Eon ticket. It just kind of shows up in your inventory. It involves Street Pass, but never directly tells you what you get. I don't know. The next legendaries involve the Eon Flute, which lets you ride Latios and explore the region in the sky. This is basically Fly but cooler. I honestly prefer the Eon Flute because unlike Fly, this doesn't take a move spot and is instead an item. You only get one per day, but by being social you can get other Mirage spots and have more to explore. Not every Mirage spot guarantees a legendary though. Some of them just have exclusive Pokemon. Having Ho-Oh in your party grants you access to the legendary dogs, that being Raikou, Entei, and Suicune. The Pathless Plain requires you to have 3 Pokemon with max EVs, which by this point in the game, if you don't have that, then what have you been doing? But this unlocks the Swords of Justice, those being Cobalion, Virizion, and Terrakion. Catching Tornadus requires you to have Castform in your party. In order to get Uxie, Mesprit, and Azelf, you must have 3 Pokemon with max happiness on your team, which can be a bit harder than the max EV requirement. In order to get Dialga and Palkia, you must have all 3 Lake Trio Pokemon in your party. In order to get Giratina, you must have Dialga and Palkia in your team. To get Reshiram and Zekrom, you must have a Pokemon that is level 100 on your team. Then to get Kyurem, you must have Reshiram and Zekrom on your team. Cresselia is the only truly random legendary here as there are no requirements. You just have to hope that a Mirage spot appears and it's on it. With all of the legendaries out of the way, we can head for the Pokemon League. And Evergrande City is literally just a Pokemon Center before Victory Road. I don't know what compelled them to call this a city, but people can't even live here. How is this a city? Victory Road is our final dungeon of the game and consists of ace trainers with diverse teams to spice things up. The puzzles in this version aren't exactly challenging, and while the routes may loop every now and then, the path is deceptively linear for the most part. This could have been the one time where the regional design could have challenged us, but instead we get the basic stuff again. At any point in time, I could just escape rope and restart with the trainers being beaten and then have the easiest time of my life in here. But who am I to do that? At the end of Victory Road, we have our final encounter with Wally, and my god, look at these flowers and waterfalls. Imagine if the entire cave looked like this. I have no idea why they made specifically the end of Victory Road look like this lush forest while the rest of the cave is the same generic rock interior. It just shows that Game Freak could put effort in the game to make it look like this, but they choose not to. I really like the setting for this final fight, but if I'm being completely honest, I forgot Wally even existed. We haven't seen or mentioned this guy since the 5th gym, so it's very easy to forget that he existed. As much as I like the arc that he goes through, I feel like it could have been more impactful if we actually saw Wally more. The last time we saw him, he was still using his area nav to get to Mahaville, and now all of a sudden he's strong enough to make it past Victory Road. I would have liked to see his growth because his intro shows that he's capable of Mega Evolution now. I would like to take some time to talk about the music for Wally. On its own, this song is super badass, but I just can't bring myself to think about Wally when I hear it. I think the electric guitar being overbearing, displaying this serious and confident tone, completely misses the mark simply because I don't associate Wally with this kind of sound. When I think Wally, I think of a super shy and nervous kid. I get that it's supposed to back up the fact that he's changed and grown. But because we never saw his journey, you're just expected to believe that this rivalry has always been fierce. The truth is, we've always been multiple steps ahead of him, and we still are. The last time we fought him, he had only a Curlia, and now he's sending out a Mega Gallade in Altaria. I'm just saying, I would have liked at least one chance to see him before this fight. Then all of these super serious and confident tones that I'm hearing would make sense. The character we know doesn't fit the character the game is trying to convey to us. The Elite Four is our finale, which actually consists of 5 trainers with the champion at the end. You cannot go back and heal, and each trainer has 5 to 6 Pokemon. Of course you can heal using items, but because there are no Pokemon centers we can go back to, it requires a lot more thinking. I know I'm extremely overleveled, but when it comes to the Elite Four, anything can happen. I would like to borrow a term that is commonly used in the video game community, and it's called play conditioning. Play conditioning is where the game conditions you how to play. The entire time, we have been conditioned to be lazy, because there are so many spots in which a trainer can just go and heal at a Pokemon Center and cruise through the game. The player is conditioned to be lazy throughout this entire game because the game constantly holds your hand. Then all of a sudden, we reach the Elite Four and we're expected to beat 26 fully evolved Pokemon with no healing in between, each with competent movesets and great coverage. I'm not saying the Elite Four is too hard, I'm saying the rest of the game is too easy. Another example of this is Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. The entire game is so easy, then when you get to the Elite Four, they're using strategies that you would see in competitive play. Flame Orb Melodic, Scope Lens Drapion to be specific. That's the same issue with this game. The crazy thing is, they don't even have items, they just have really good move pools. But because the entire game beforehand is so easy, a complex move pool feels like a challenge. Starting with Sydney, our Dark-type user.
Because I'm a gangster having fun.
Despite the Elite Four all being monotype, they do a great job of still being diverse in their second type. Well, usually. For some reason there isn't the diversity you would expect in a game. Like Will and Heart Gold and Soul Silver had a water, ice, flying, and grass type despite being a psychic type user. Sydney has the most diverse team out of every single Elite Four member aside from the champion. He has 2 pure dark types, 2 grass dark types, and a water dark type. So only 3 different type combos. Which is crazy to me, and only 2 of these Pokemon have a way of countering their weakness. Shiftry has Extra Sensory and Absol has Psycho Cut, but that's it. You could send out a fighting type and wipe out half his team, which should not be the issue. Even if his entire team is monotype, there should be moves on his Pokemon that cover their weaknesses. That's how it's been for almost every other Elite Four. Every Pokemon on his team should have a moveset like Absol. His Absol has moves that benefit from Stab, a move that benefits from its Super Luck ability, and then 2 moves that cover its weaknesses. If every Pokemon was like this, then I would be fine with the monotype, but it's not. And as the person who has been nitpicking everything with this game already, I also have to point this out because other games do this. I mean, to be fair, he doesn't have many options to choose from, but he could have done better with what he has.
Oh shit! Must have been a ghost then!
Phoebe is the master of ghost types, and I will always find the ghost type to be a hard type to deal with. They aren't exactly the hardest hitting Pokemon, and that's what makes them scary. Especially Phoebe's team, where she has so many Pokemon that know Confuse Ray, she can Will-O-Wisp you and burn you, Toxic to badly poison your Pokemon, and Foul Play is a move based on how powerful your attack stat is. So what they lack in type coverage, they make up in tactics. Not to mention her Dusknoir has the elemental punches. The biggest miss out of her entire team is her Sableye. It has the ability Prankster, which gives priority to moves that inflict status conditions. Yet she didn't give a single status move to her Sableye. Toxic, Will-O-Wisp, Confuse Ray. All of these moves are on her other Pokemon. Imagine how much harder this fight would have been knowing that one of her Pokemon had priority in status conditions. That straight up alters how one would move about in this fight. Not to mention, Sableye's only weakness is Fairy, so if you don't have a Fairy type or move, you'll most likely be doing neutral damage to defeat it. Sableye could have easily been one of her stronger Pokemon, but instead it's one of her weakest. Glacio's bad as a person and also bad at Pokemon. I have no idea why this game keeps trying to force slow, tanky ice types on us when that is not what the ice type is supposed to be. Glalie and Walrein are so bad, and that is more than half of her team. The other two Pokemon being Frostlass. If the first Glalie can somehow set up Hail, then these two Frostlass are going to be really hard to take out because their ability increases their evasion in Hail. I don't really know what to say here because odds are if you have a super effective move, you won't even see what her team has to offer. And that's going to be what happens 99% of the time because the ice type is weak to so many types.
Say that you a lesbian, girl, me too.
The dragon type user who wears a captain hat like he's Joshua Block or something. In Gen 3, this would have actually been a hard fight, but one fairy type can completely nullify his entire team. Why did I want Altaria? Because its Mega is fairy type while getting the same type attack bonus from both Moonblast and Dragon Pulse. Dragon isn't just not very effective, Fairy is completely immune to dragon type moves in general, so Drake's team has to rely on its non-stab moves. Don't get me wrong, he has some unique Pokemon like Kingdra, Salamence, and Flygon, but none of that matters simply because of a type, which in my opinion is completely broken. Types are the only thing that matters in these fights, because no matter what strategy you have, it doesn't matter if I just brute force my way through using super effective moves. Why have all of these different moves like Reflect or Setting Up Weather when I can just have 4 moves that give me insane type coverage and be able to have super effective moves all the time? This is just a flaw of Pokemon in general, but moves don't matter, the types do. And as long as you have a type advantage, you'll always just be picking the super effective move. The completely immune types highlight this because I can understand reducing half the damage done to a not very effective type, but to be completely immune and negate all damage done might be a little too much, even if it does make sense from a logical standpoint as to why it's completely immune. Time for the big reveal that I spoiled earlier, Steven is the champion of the region. Something that genuinely bothers me is what he says before the battle. He wants to see our perspective of the journey we've been on. Now, I know Pokemon battles can show one's determination and how much one has learned about their Pokemon, but to explain my philosophy about life through a Pokemon battle is the dumbest thing I've heard, even for a kid's game. What, is my surf gonna show you that I think nobody can be truly altruistic? Steven's team isn't monotype, but still has a massive problem being weak to Blaziken. Blaziken being firefighting makes him have a type advantage over 4 of his 6 Pokemon, which once again is a big problem. He mainly uses the Steel and Rock type, but I feel like his team has a historical theme rather than a type theme. He has the 2 fossil Pokemon, a Claydol, and 3 Steel types, so you can kind of see where that historical theme is coming from. I guess the better word would be geological. Skarmory having Sturdy is a huge benefit since that means it's guaranteed to set its traps. That instantly makes this fight way harder than anything we've seen before because Steven has a competent strategy, but he's also able to get it to work no matter what Pokemon you send out. Metagross might be the first Pokemon to have a Mega Evolution I don't like. Metagross's entire evolution is the combination of the previous evolution. You start with Beldum, and in order to get Metang, you combine 2 Beldums. And in order to get Metagross, you combine 2 Metangs. Mega Metagross should be the combination of 2 Metagrosses then, right? No, it's just full of spikes and starts floating and it just looks really ugly to me. After beating Steven, you get inducted into the Hall of Fame and head back to Little Root with May. She reminisces about her time with you and how she's watched you grow and you reach the pond on Route 103. She wants you to have one final battle with her at the same location of the first battle, which is the perfect way to end a story. God damn it, you aren't Steven! Even though she's weaker than Steven, this fight is a bit more personal as it shows both characters and their growth. After all, May has been with us since the very beginning. Despite me shitting on this game for the way it handles its storytelling, I think that this is the best way to end a Pokemon game. Two people who have realized where they want to go in their journey, coming back together just for a battle among friends. May is more confident now that she's found her path in it being completely different from ours, but still challenging us because that's what friends do in the Pokemon universe. It's reminiscent, it's personal, and it's down to earth, which is what Pokemon is good at doing. And they did a great job here once again. Whoa, 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 what is that? No, 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 no! Opening up Omega Ruby again leads the player into the Delta episode, and we are immediately thrusted into a galactic problem. A meteorite randomly changes its route in space, suddenly heading straight for the Earth, and that has the Moss Deep Space Center in shambles. We are also introduced to Zinnia. She was a former Team Magma grunt and was actually shown to us in Petalburg Woods and after the player defeats Groudon. She actually wanted Groudon to be revived, but since we stopped that process, she wants that to happen. I have no idea what she could possibly be alluding to, and I don't think from context clues given to us, we are ever able to identify what that is. Then the screen zooms out and gives us the 6 symbol and title card. Back in Little Root, we can see our dad actually working on his relationship with his wife. For once he's home. Holy shit! He reveals that he actually can't do things with the person he married, so I should go with that cutie May to see the meteor shower in Moss Deep. In 1891, a man by the name of James Naismith created the sport known as basketball. Over time, the sport had tremendous growth as players got better, dunking became a thing, and the three-point line was invented. There was one thing that was invented that changed the sport of basketball: the alley-oop. When one player throws the ball up in the air and hopes that their teammate catches the ball mid-air and dunks the basketball. And what my dad just did was throw me the biggest alley-oop in my 13 years of living. Do you know how f***ing cool meteor showers are? If you have never been to a meteor shower, they are beautiful. This is unfumbleable Riz right now. Tickets to a sold-out meteor shower. Leaving our house so we can ask May on a date, we get ambushed by Zinnia. She rambles about Mega Evolution and then leaves. So basically she does nothing. Going into Petalburg, you encounter Wally and Courtney. Wally is claiming that someone stole his keystone for Mega Evolution. By applying a tiny bit of thinking, you realize that Zinnia is probably the one going around and stealing those keystones. You then get thrusted into Rustboro where you talk with Steven and his dad about infinity energy. 3,000 years ago, there was an ultimate weapon created in Kalos, the region of the X and Y games. This weapon ran on the life energy of a Pokemon, which I don't even want to try and think about how that works, but this infinite energy is, well, infinite at the expense of many Pokemon, which is crazy to think about. Maybe Devon Corporation is the real evil team. Team Magma actually does not compare to what this guy just said. President Stone just admitted to us that they create energy at the expense of Pokemon, and nobody is questioning this. So far, in the 5 minutes that I've been in the Delta episode, there have been 3 separate plot lines given to us. Zinnia is stealing keystones and has access to this ancient place, while Moss Deep is concerned about a meteorite heading straight for the Earth, and Devon Corporation wants us to help them with their research on the ultimate weapon. And while I'm trying to process all of this, I can go back to Little Root and get a Johto starter. Why can I get a Johto starter? Who the f knows why? There is no structure to the Delta story. They are trying to tell so many different stories, and as of right now, they're doing a terrible job at tying them together. It is explanation after explanation without ever actually telling us why this is relevant. Because as far as I'm concerned, the only issue happening right now is the meteorite, and our character in the game isn't even aware of this issue. While retrieving the meteorite in Granite Cave, you run into Zinnia, who immediately tells you that she adores you, that she wants to have a Pokemon battle. After losing, she turns into N, talking about truths and ideals, and how much of the truth do we actually know? Bitch, I do not care! How are you relevant to anything that I am doing right now? I just want some sort of tie between these 3 separate plot lines given to us. Steven wants us to take the meteorite shard to Moss Deep. It is then explained there that the plan to stop this meteorite is to send a rocket into space full of mega evolution energy and teleport it away to another planet using a device called the link cable. Dude, I cannot with this game. How does any of this make any sense, even for a Pokemon game? I don't understand how people can defend the Delta episode. It's also explained that the same technology that they're using to warp a meteorite to another dimension is the same technology used by the warp panels. So to clear things up for you, these things can possibly send me to another f***ing dimension. I think I just need to point that out in detail. To make matters worse, Zinnia shows up again and is mad that our solution is to use the same technology as the ultimate weapon from 3,000 years ago. She claims to have a better solution, but instead of telling us that solution, she just runs off. What the f***? She had the potential to solve the conflict at hand, but instead just scrams off like the monkey she pretends to be when you fight her. But if she did tell us our plan and the protagonist helps her with her plan, then there would be no need for the Delta episode. So to sum up the Delta episode, a meteorite is coming towards Earth. The scientist comes up with the plan, Zinnia criticizes the plan, and has an alternative, but doesn't tell us that alternative. The episode could have literally ended right here. Instead, I'm asked whether or not I have a solution. I'm a 13-year-old kid who knows nothing about space and teleportation. Why would I have an effective solution to the problem at hand right now? It's like asking Jojo Siwa an effective solution to stop the war in Ukraine. There's no correlation whatsoever. I'm just good at Pokemon. At Meteor Falls, we learn more about Zinnia. She was a member of the Draconids, a group of people that formed to praise Rayquaza, and they view Rayquaza as a guardian deity. I'm actually very interested in the Draconids lore and wish they expanded upon this more. I definitely think they deserve their own sort of world building. Maybe it could be a major part of Legends Z through A, but knowing how Pokemon games are now, this will never happen. It is also told to us that Zinnia is the generation's keeper of Rayquaza, and is the only one who knows how to summon it. You go back to Rustboro to fight Team Magma, just to go to Moss Deep and fight Team Magma again. There is no exploration here. It's just using Fly to go between towns and read text box after text box. What do we have to do again? Eon Flute our way over to Moss Deep again. Courtney's chat GPT brain has gone loose and gets hold of the link cable. She apparently wants to destroy it, thus leading to the end of the world. As if the stakes weren't already high enough. What are you even in this story? I am not looking for some super complex and deep story in a Pokemon game. All I want from this game is to give me something that makes sense. Is that too much to ask for? After defeating Courtney, Zinnia comes in and destroys the link cable anyways, so now we have to follow her plan that she still hasn't told us. Zinnia heads to the magma layout and steals Maxie's keystone, so naturally we follow her and for some reason we still have to take on her grunts. Despite Maxie realizing his wrongs and not being hostile towards us, and you know, who gives a damn? This all sucks. Zinnia explicitly tells you that she's going to Sky Pillar, so naturally you would follow her there, right? No, you actually have to go to Steven, tells you to go to Wallace, and then Wallace tells you to go to the Sky Pillar, and then you challenge Wallace to make sure you're worthy of entering. Dude, why? Inside the Sky Pillar, Zinnia explains the history of her people and how they are important during Groudon and Kyogre's frequent clashes. A group of Dragon-type users who... Oh, I guess that's it. I'll have to get to the next floor for her to tell me more. I don't even know why the f*** I'm playing this game at this point. I could just not care about the story, but I'm trying to analyze the story because I'm making a review video on this game. But I can't fucking analyze it because you tell me 3 sentences and then make me wait 2 minutes just to tell me another 3 sentences. By the time I get to the next floor, I've already forgotten what you've told me on the first floor. As for the story itself, it's a series of events that revolve around Groudon and Kyogre going ballistic, and then a meteor hitting the Earth. Then Groudon and Kyogre go insane again, another meteor hits the Earth. Then Groudon and Kyogre get mad at the meteor, and then Rayquaza comes down and sorts everything out every time this happens. Zinnia's story is so complicated that I think it actually contradicts the origin of Pseutopolis. From what I understand, Pseutopolis is based on volcanic caldera. But Zinnia describes Pseutopolis' origin as a crater caused by a meteor. That meteor eventually became the source of Groudon's power, and I don't know what to believe because the game tells you both of these, but they actively contradict each other. Also within this story, there's supposedly a prophecy that one day a meteor is going to strike Hoenn, and there would be someone to save the day. This game is just trying to combine so many things, and none of them complement each other. You want to know Zinnia's plan? Rayquaza has protected the Earth from disaster every time it has shown up, and Zinnia wants to summon Rayquaza to protect the Earth from this meteorite. That's it! I summed up all of the Delta episode in 2 sentences! How hard was it to tell the scientist, or Steven, that you wanted to summon Rayquaza to stop the meteorite, instead of using portal interdimensional shit? All of this running around between Dewford, Rustboro, and Mossdeep was just so she could tell you those 2 sentences. She also explains that she lost someone in her life, and in honor of this person, she named her Whismur Aster, the name of the person she lost. I would low-key feel disrespected if my legacy was passed on to a Whismur. But by summoning Rayquaza, she realizes that it might be a suicide pact, and by doing so, she might be able to see Aster again. And this is some heavy stuff to drop last second. And while I do sympathize with her reasoning, if this was executed better, maybe I would have actually cared. Because to be completely honest, I don't give a shit. It's hard to sympathize with the character you hate. She knocks you out and you wake up and it's daytime. Now this may seem like it's for no reason, but I actually looked this up and I know why they did it, and it's hilarious. It goes all the way back to the clock in the beginning of the game. They needed the game's internal clock to be at night during the scene where she talks about the stars. But then when she needs you to summon Rayquaza, they need the scene to fit, so she knocks you out as a way of time skipping. But also she needs you to be awake as a backup for summoning Rayquaza. I can imagine in her mind she punches the hell out of you, then realizes, oh wait, I actually need him. And then sits there waiting for us to wake up. I mean, at least she actually summons Rayquaza and gets straight to the point. Once Rayquaza is summoned, she realizes that she can't control it. Well damn, maybe if we had an alternative solution, this wouldn't be so bad. Turns out that random meteorite we got was important, so we are chosen to go against Rayquaza. You're actually required to catch him here. If you defeat him, you back out and he's still there. You are forced to battle him until you catch him. To accommodate for this, they make his catch rate a lot higher than the normal legendary encounter. You are then forced to use this Rayquaza and fight Zinnia. Might I just mention how broken this Mega Rayquaza is? Not a single stat below 100. Delta Stream eliminates all flying type weaknesses. 780 stat points, with almost 200 of them in attack and special attack. It can Mega Evolve while holding an item. This thing is so broken that it was banned from Uber tiers, which is the highest tier, and created the Anything Goes tier in competitive Pokemon. This is by far the strongest thing ever created. Anyways, after beating Zinnia, you're the one chosen to go into space and solve the meteorite problem. How the f are we not dead? To summarize what we just saw, we pulled out a spacesuit and flew into space on the back of a Rayquaza and went probably a couple thousand miles straight into a meteor. To everyone's guess, the meteorite was a Deoxys, a mythical Pokemon. I feel like us constantly running into these legendaries kind of devalues them a bit. I mean, in this game alone, we are forced into battling 3 legendaries. I prefer when these legendaries are hidden away and you have to explore on your own and solve these puzzles to find them. That alone gives a mythological vibe, because after all, these are supposed to be mythological legends with tons of lore surrounding their existence. If you wondered why this game suddenly took the theme of space when the entire time we've been talking about the land, sea, and sky, this kind of makes sense now that you think about it. It's not just about these topics, it's about the origin of these topics. Kyogre created the seas, Groudon created the lands, and Rayquaza created the atmosphere. All that's left is the DNA one would need to create life, thus being Deoxys, which is short for the full name of DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid. This is the hardest thing to catch. First off, the last time we were able to save was before the Rayquaza encounter, so if you knock it out, you have to go through all of that previous to this. Secondly, it has the hardest capture rate in the game while also having recover. Not to mention, it has paper-thin defense. While it can raise that defense with cosmic power, you are then risking it by the possibility of a critical hit. What I'm trying to say is that this is the time you should use your Master Ball. After the battle with Deoxys, the story is over, and thank God! You see everyone reflect on their mistakes, except for Courtney, because she's just left off the hook for holding the world hostage. It works for Maxie because his problem was an actual problem. It's just that his solution was misguided. But Courtney just held the world hostage for no reason. She shouldn't have been in this story at all. I guess the one thing that I've been constantly scrutinizing this game for is the fact that it tries to be this grand story with life-threatening stakes on the line when it doesn't have to be that way. Not only does it suck at it, but Pokemon has never been that type of game. If I wanted a grand story with life-threatening stakes, I can go to so many different games to get that. Pokemon is supposed to be about a kid who goes on a journey and experiences personal growth. A kid who wants to be the very best like no one ever was. When you start introducing topics such as space travel and interdimensional regions, it loses that personal connection. Omega Ruby is just simply about destroying the world, and that method just happens to be by using Groudon. The Delta episode was the same thing. The world's about to end and we need Rayquaza. You are only here because everyone constantly tells you that you're the only one who can do it. You are the only one who can stop Groudon. You have the ability to become the champion. You can summon Rayquaza even though the girl who trained her entire life can't. You can go into space and stop a meteor. You can do all of this just because it is predetermined that you are the best at absolutely everything. There is a point in which even fantasy becomes unrealistic to the average person. The final battle with May near the pond is a way better ending than this terribly written shithole that I just went through. I firmly believe that the only person who hates Zinnia more than me is the official manga writer. Like, damn, they just straight up killed her. At least we finally go to see our meteor shower with May. Why the f*** are you sitting so far away from her? God damn it, dude, how do you fumble an unfumbleable situation? After the Delta episode, there is a bunch of miscellaneous stuff we can do. Professor Birch is being chased by the Pokemovers, which is a funny little gag that I can appreciate. It's like the writers themselves knew how silly it was for a grown man to get chased around by a Poochyena. Even later, you can find him being chased by his wife. You end up getting 4 sets of starters. The Hoenn starters, the Johto starters, the Unova starters, and the Sinnoh starters. Speaking of free Pokemon, Steven gives you a free Beldum at his house. He's not actually there, he just leaves you a note assuming that you'll walk into his house. Heading to either Slateport or Lily Cove's docks, you can head to the Battle Resort, a place for competitive Pokemon battling. You see Archie and his admins, and holy shit, why didn't I play Alpha Sapphire? They're really only here to mention Alpha Sapphire's existence because Archie talks about a different world in which maybe they tried to revive Kyogre. Nice little things you guys did there. Now, to get the elephant out of the room right away, many ask why the Battle Frontier didn't come back. Well, there's an interview about this that answers why. Simply put, it was believed that only a small number of people would have enjoyed its inclusion, claiming that nowadays players get bored and frustrated more easily and they aren't interested in things that are more challenging. Which, I don't know where they pulled this logic from, but that is the complete opposite of how I feel. I think the more challenging something is, the more I want to beat it. It feels more rewarding when you do so. My guess is that it was simply due to time constraints. There are so many cut corners and unresolved plot lines present in these games. Just right now, you can see Looker has his own subplot in this game. He washed up on the beach with amnesia and was taken back to this girl's cottage. But this was never resolved. That's all we get. He gives you an Audinite, and that's it. The Battle Maison is the main attraction here. You go through Pokemon battles earning battle points that can be exchanged for rare items. The farther you go in this marathon, the tougher and smarter your opponents get. Pokemon are either set to level 50 or level 100, and you aren't allowed to use items. You are also forced to play in set mode, which means you don't know ahead of time what the other person is sending out. Competitive Pokemon is such a complicated and tedious process. There are so many things that require a Pokemon to be perfect, like the nature and moveset and items and IVs, breeding. There's just so much that needs to be obtained that takes so much time and effort, and from my eyes, it's not even worth it. Everything needs to be so perfect that if you are serious about this place, then everything you have ever done in this game doesn't even matter. You probably messed up your Pokemon's growth somewhere for it to be perfect. You might as well restart and find an entirely new team to perfectly train. The final thing we have to cover in this game are the Elite Four rematches. These battles use the National Dex, which means we see full teams of 6 Pokemon from other regions. Sydney uses a more fleshed out team that can cover their weaknesses better. He gets rid of Cacturne and Mightyena and replaces them with a Scrafty, Mandibuzz, and Zoroark. While I can appreciate the inclusion of Scrafty and Mandibuzz, Zoroark might be the biggest waste of a slot on his team. The ability Illusion lets the Pokemon be sent out disguised as the Pokemon in the last slot. The reason why this is effective is because your last slot could be what Dark types are strong against. You could be showing your opponent a Poison type, and then when they use a Psychic type move, it would be immune. Not only is there a chance that the person would be like, what? But it also wastes one of their turns trying to figure out that you have a Pokemon with Illusion. So when you use your pure Dark type Pokemon to resemble another pure Dark type, what is the actual point of using the ability? In these rematches, every member will have a Pokemon capable of Mega Evolving, and that will be their ace. Sydney has a Mega Absol, which I think fits him. The only complaint here is that once again the trainers don't have items on their Pokemon. Phoebe's new ace is Sableye, who still doesn't take advantage of its Prankster ability. She also has a Chandelure, Drifblim, and Mismagius that replaces one of her Bannettes and Dusclops. Glacia has a Mega Glalie and fixes her weather problem. By starting off the fight with an Abomasnow that has Snow Warning for its ability, that means Hail is guaranteed in her fight. That actively benefits 4 of her Pokemon and is a much needed improvement for her rematch. She also adds a Beartic and Vanillux, which aren't really strong, but benefit from the hail. Drake adds a Dragalge, which can defend itself from fairy types, but once that Dragalge is out, the entire team still suffers the problem of being useless against fairies. If you can bait out that Dragalge and knock it out as early as possible, this fight is still really easy. Doesn't matter if he has a Mega Salamence or not, the only move he can use against a fairy type is Zen Headbutt. He also adds a Haxorus that replaces one of the Flygons. Steven gets rid of his fossil Pokemon in exchange for Carbink and Aerodactyl, a change that I think diminishes his character a little, but who really cares at this point in the game? As far as difficulty, I actually think his first team is way harder. By getting rid of that Cradily, my Swampert was able to be a bit more impactful in the fight as water types have a lot more free roam in this fight. After defeating Steven a second time, he gives you his Mega Metagrossite and we enter the Hall of Fame again, with Cloud9 being our highest level Pokemon at level 80. And with that, we have truly done everything in Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Omega Ruby has been regarded as the best and worst game in the Pokemon series, making it a highly controversial game. And after doing a review on it, I think I have found the strengths and weaknesses of this game. Starting with the pros, I would like to bring up the music for this game. This single-handedly enhances the gameplay and each song has its own unique sound. Even though Hoenn is known for its dominating trumpets, it's able to reimagine those trumpets in different ways for each song. While I might think that a song may be misplaced or misused, when listening to it on its own, it's an absolute banger. The more important battles sound important, while the route themes all sound adventurous. For the most part, every song plays its role perfectly. Although Mega Evolution is a bit flawed because of the Pokemon it's given to, its inclusion and introduction in this game is done way better than X and Y, which is crazy to say because X and Y was the game that gave us Mega Evolution. I also like how Mega Evolution isn't just something only we can do. It's something everyone knows about and they eventually get their own keystone too. The Dex Nav, Super Training, and Pokemon Ami are great additions for the player. The Dex Nav allows for the player to limit the luck that comes with wild encounters, and an even better thing about the Dex Nav is that it still works while you use repels. You can have a repel active and still search for desired Pokemon. It feels like I'm actually doing my research on Pokemon like the Pokemon professors want you to. I'll tell you, Professor Oak would be so proud of me during this playthrough. Strength training is a fun side mode that benefits the player for using it. Your Pokemon get stronger by using the punching bags and playing the minigames. Pokemon and Me is an effective way to raise affection with Pokemon, and also just super fun mode to forget about the world. Speaking of the world, each town is well thought out and unique. I can remember so many towns even after not playing the game because of how detailed and cool they are. I mean, a treehouse town, the Hot Springs town. Mauville is basically a shopping mall. Moss Deep has all of the space things going for it. Pacific Log Town is made out of floating logs above a coral reef. Secret Bases at the time of release was single-handedly the reason why I kept coming back to this game. It is such a great addition and complements Street Pass so well, and the best part is that it doesn't obstruct progress. It's something you can do as you progress because they've scattered it all over the region. There are some great ideas here, but that's where the positives end for me. Now I want to talk about the negatives. I might have praised the towns for their uniqueness, but the routes are extremely forgettable. The most obvious example being the 17 water routes that are all the same, but even take those out and I can hardly remember the routes. It doesn't help that they use the same brown color for every cave and the level design for each route isn't fresh. The balance in this game is the second biggest problem. The level curve is abysmal, as yes, it may start off pretty challenging, but as you go on, you just keep getting broken item after broken item. Within a matter of minutes you become overleveled and then the game becomes brain dead. This level curve is so low because of the massive amount of tutorials throughout the game. You are being caressed throughout this entire game because the game doesn't want you to be challenged. I find it ironic how the people of Game Freak didn't want people to become bored with the game, so they lowered the difficulty. But because they lowered the difficulty, the game becomes boring. Not to mention, these tutorials explain things in a nonsensical order. Learning how to catch Pokemon after you are given a tutorial that involves catching Pokemon isn't the brightest idea. Some tutorials don't even explain the things they need to. The DexNav tutorial skips over so much, and that could possibly leave people thinking this thing is useless when it's the best addition to the game. Another thing poorly explained are the contests, a side mode that seems to be great on the outside, but then once you do a contest, you realize it's just a half-assed side mode that has no reason to exist. And finally, the story of this game is an absolute mess. Both stories are. But talking about Team Magma, I understand that Pokemon is a series meant for kids, but that doesn't mean you can make the story be whatever it wants to be without making any sense. I'm not asking for a story to be life-threatening and have stakes so high the world might end. I just want a story to make sense. If you do choose to make a story about the Earth exploding, at least have an understandable timeline or effective pacing within the game that can naturally create the high stakes. Not just have nothing happen for a majority of it and then all of a sudden, BAM! The world is ending and we're the protagonists, so do something. If the game didn't treat us as a prodigy the entire time, maybe the game's story could have thrived and maybe our relationship with Maxie wouldn't have been so one-sided. Moving on to the Delta episode, I actually have no idea how anyone in the world can defend this story. There is no structure to the postgame, and it introduces us to so many plot lines at the very beginning that you spend more time trying to figure out how it's connected rather than actually playing. You aren't doing any world building throughout your story. You just fly to a location for some text bubbles, then fly to the next location for some text bubbles, and then repeat until it's over. There are so many unnecessary inclusions as well. Courtney doesn't need to exist, and Steven spends half of the episode saying nonsense to himself. There is so much white noise in this game that it's hard to pinpoint what is important and what isn't. An effective story can convey its message thoroughly with as little words as possible, and Omega Ruby fails at both of these things. If you are going to make a story-oriented game, then the story needs to at least make sense. You can sit here and ask why I spent so much time complaining about a game, but fiction has the power to influence us as humans. Like, does anybody ever get those Hope Core Instagram reels when they're laying in their bed at 1 a.m.? A lot of those life-changing messages are from cartoons and works of fiction. I have always thought that fiction is a representation of our experiences as humans, which is why we can relate ourselves to non-existent characters. So yes, I will complain about a kid's game because it's not effective in making a person playing the game think about how it relates to them. I'm not saying it has to make you cry, I'm just saying it should make you reflect a bit. If you aren't saying, oh, well, that guy has good points, then the story isn't good, and it's not doing its job. I find it bewildering that IGN felt nice enough to give it a 7.8 out of 10, because in my opinion, this game deserves way lower. In my personal opinion, I think this game sucks. If this is your favorite game, that's your opinion, and I respect that. I also enjoy playing this game. It is okay to enjoy playing a bad game. I mean, I like playing Wii Music because it's dumb fun. And if I can like a game for it being so bad it's enjoyable, then surely there are those that like this game for that same reason. But holding this game up as one of the best games in the Pokemon franchise and the most optimal way to play Hoenn is not true at all. We have a complete version and a way better way to play Hoenn, and it's called Pokemon Emerald. But none of this matters anyways, because once a new Pokemon game comes out, everybody and their grandmas keeps buying and praising these games, and let all these problems go just because it's Pokemon. Even worse, they started doing DLCs, which is paying for content within a game that's already broken. There is a reason why I don't buy the Switch games. The quality divide from generations 1 through 5 to 6 through 9 are so blatant to the naked eye, it feels like Alpha Sapphire and Omega Ruby were the games in which Game Freak realized that they don't have to make an average game to make hella profit. It is because I am a fan of Pokemon that I am so critical of these games. I know Game Freak can do better because I've seen them do better, but what do I know? What they're doing now seems to be working for them. And as long as they're still reaping the benefit of cutting as many corners as possible and making the lowest quality games they can, then we'll never get the quality expected from a billion-dollar company. And that is why I think Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are games that reset a franchise.